Hey, welcome friends. What if Naruto breaks Fem Tsunade movie? A newborn baby wailed as it laid in a small crib on top of the desk inside of the Hokage's office. It had been about 1 hour since the nine-tailed fox was defeated by the fourth Hokage and sealed inside a newborn baby whose umbilical cord was just cut, saving the lives of the remaining villagers of the Hidden Leaf village, but in turn, losing his own life in the process. The very same newborn baby was currently screaming his heart out from inside of his crib on the Hokage's desk, well wrapped warmly in a blanket. Sitting behind the desk smoking a pipe was Hiruzen Sarutobi, third Hokage. He was staring at the baby with a sympathetic look on his face, knowing the burden the young child now carries. Off to the side of the office, sitting on the only couch in the room, was the former student of the third Hokage and godfather to the crying baby, Jiraiya the Toad Sage. "Quite the pair of lungs this one has," Jiraiya commented as he stood up and walked over to the crying baby. "You get that from your mother for sure," he added, causing the age-old Hokage to chuckle in agreement as he began to remember how loud and hyperactive Kushina was as a child, while at the same time how quiet and easygoing Minato was. Jiraiya picked up the baby and began rocking him in his arms in hope of comforting the baby. Sadly, it did not help, the baby continued to cry. "I think you are scaring young Naruto more than anything," the third Hokage said with a chuckle, causing Jiraiya's head to drop. Jiraiya was about to give a reply about how much kids love him, but before he could open his mouth to say anything, the doors of the Hokage's office burst open, nearly blowing the doors off their hinges. "Sarutobi Sensei!" yelled out the only female student that the third Hokage had and teammate to Jiraiya, Tsunade Senju. "Where is Minato and Kushina?" she asked as she stormed into the office with a small girl no older than 16 following behind her. "I went to the hospital to see if they were there to treat their wounds, but I couldn't find them," she stated as she marched straight towards her sensei, completely ignoring Jiraiya and the crying baby's presence. "Have a seat, Tsunade," the Hokage said as he placed his pipe down and stared at his student with a sympathetic look on his face. Seeing the look on her sensei's face told Tsunade everything she needed to know. It was a look she had seen far too many times. Minato and Kushina sacrificed themselves to seal the nine tails away, the Hokage said, causing the little girl that was with Tsunade to gasp in shock as she heard what the Hokage said. "I'm sorry, Tsunade," he added as he reached over the table and squeezed his student's hand, trying to comfort her. "First it was grandfather, then granduncle, then Dan and Nawaki, and now my son and daughter-in-law," Tsunade said as tears streamed out of her eyes. "Maybe I am cursed," she added between sobs. Now Tsuna," Jiraiya said, still trying to comfort Naruto. "I can't comfort both you and the baby at the same time," she said, getting her attention. "Baby?" Tsunade said in a confused voice as she turned to the Toad Sage. Upon seeing a head full of blonde hair and 3 whisker marks on each cheek, she sprang to her feet and shouted, "Naruto!" she yelled out as she took the baby from Jiraiya and began rocking him in her arms. "What did you do to my grandson, you old pervert?" she said angrily, causing Jiraiya's gape at her like a fish. "Shhhh. There, Grandma's here," Tsunade said in a soothing tone as she rocked Naruto in her arms. To the surprise of the two men in the room, the baby slowly began to stop crying until he was perfectly quiet in his grandmother's arms, staring up at her with a pair of cerulean blue eyes. "How did you do that?" Jiraiya asked as he looked over Tsunade's shoulder down at the baby. "He was screaming when he was with me," he added. "Must have been your face," Tsunade said with a chuckle, causing her sensei and the little girl with her to chuckle at the expense of Jiraiya. Hearing everyone around him chuckle, little Naruto gave out a cute giggle as he looked up at his grandmother. Hearing everyone, even his own godson, laughing at him, Jiraiya went over the corner of the room to sulk. Tsunade sat back down on the chair in front of the desk as she continued to stare lovingly at the baby. "He looks like big brother Minato," the little girl said, causing everyone in the room to nod in agreement. "You're right, Shizune," Tsunade said as she turned from her student to look at her grandson, "but he has Kushina's face," she added. "Tsunade," the third Hokage said, getting her attention. "There is something I have to tell you about Naruto," he said, causing her to look back down at the baby. Before the third Hokage could speak again, Tsunade spoke up. "The nine tails is sealed inside of him, isn't it?" she asked, causing Shizune's eyes to widen in shock. "Yes, it is," the Hokage replied as he nodded her head. "How did you know?" he asked, causing Tsunade to chuckle with a sad look on her face. "I know my son very well," she said as she fought back tears. "He would never ask someone else to give up their child to be condemned to the life of a Jinchuriki. It is something he would only do to his own child," she said, causing both Jiraiya and Hiruzen to nod their heads, both knowing the kind of man Minato was. "Tsunade, I have to ask," the former Hokage suddenly said in a serious voice. "You were there when Kushina gave birth. How did the nine tails break the seal?" he asked, causing Tsunade to growl in anger as she recalls the memory of Naruto's birth. "Everything was going fine," she said as she began stroking Naruto's hair. "Naruto came out and I handed him to Lady Bawako to clean him up before I turned my attention back to Kushina. It was then a masked man showed up," she said, causing both Jiraiya and Hiruzen's eyes to narrow. "He took Naruto hostage and undid the seal on Kushina," she said with another growl. I couldn't see his face, but there is one thing I know for sure, he was in Uchiha, she said, surprising everyone. Are you sure? Jiraiya asked as he stood up and walked over to the window. If he isn't one of the Uchiha, he has a Sharingan, she said as she turned and looked at her old teammate. It always was rumored that the Sharingan had the power to control the Nine Tails, said the third Hokage. Madara was said to be the only Uchiha to have the power to control the fox, but if there is now another, he said as she trailed off and looked at Naruto. Then that means he may come after Naruto next, Jiraiya said seriously as he looked at his godson. I dare someone to try and touch a hair on my grandson's head, Tsunade said in a dangerous tone as she hugged Naruto tighter, while Shizune stood closer to her teacher as she too took up a protective stance over the baby. For now, let us just make sure Naruto not only grows up safe, but also ensuring that he has a normal or as close to normal life as possible, the Hokage earning a nod from everyone. So, who is going to be Hokage now? Jiraiya suddenly asked. Well, I kind of hoping one of you will take the hat, he said as he looked at his two former students with a hopeful look on his face. Not happening. Jiraiya and Tsunade said simultaneously, causing the age-old Hokage to sigh. I guess I will have to take up the mantle again, he said as he looked at his two students. Danzo will probably try to use this to his advantage to become Hokage, he added as he began thinking about his old teammate. He is probably going to want to take Naruto as well, he said, causing both Tsunade and Jiraiya to narrow their eyes. I plan on taking Naruto out of the village, Tsunade suddenly said, surprising everyone. He won't be safe here with Danzo and his root always looming around, and not to mention that masked Uchiha could very well be inside the village. I don't plan on just sitting around here waiting for one of them to strike. She said as she looked down at Naruto, apparently found the adult conversation boring and fell asleep. Are sure that is wise? The Hokage asked as he looked at his student. It was Minato's dying wish that Naruto is seen as a hero by the village, he said, recalling Minato's last words to him. You and I both know that is not going to happen, Tsunade said as she looked up at her former sensei. He is now a Jinchuriki, and we all know Jinchurikis are always hated by everyone in their respected villages. They are treated as though they are the demons themselves, and I refuse to have my grandson go through life being hated and shunned everywhere he goes, she said strongly. I am going to make sure he has a life where he is loved and cherished. I am sure his parents would have rather that over something as trivial as being seen as a hero, she added, causing Jiraiya to smile while the Hokage to sigh. Where are you going to take him then? He asked, causing Tsunade to think about a second before she replied. I won't tell you right now, she said seriously, surprising the old Hokage. The fewer people that know about where Naruto will be the better. I will send you a message of where we are by one of Katsuya summons, cause this room isn't exactly secure right now, she said as she looked around the room. Hiruzen nodded his head, understanding the precautions that Tsunade was taking. If there is nothing else, Sensei, Tsunade said before she stood up, Shizune and I need to get our stuff together for our journey, she said before she began making her way out of the room with Naruto in her arms, and Shizune following closely behind, leaving the two men behind in the room. After they left the room, the third Hokage turned to Jiraiya and spoke. Jiraiya, he said, getting the Toad Sage's attention, we suffered a major loss in this attack, and other villages may try to use this to their advantage to launch an all-out invasion while we are weak. I want you to use your spy network to not only find out about any potential threats to the village, but also want you to use it to spread misinformation to other villages when it relates to our current strength. Make them think we didn't suffer that much of a loss, and we are still as strong as ever, he said in a commanding tone. Understood, Sensei. Jiraiya said with a salute before he hopped out of the open window in the office. The old Hokage took a deep sigh before he stood up and stood by the window looking out of the village. As he looked out, he saw destruction everywhere. Ninjas were running all over the village, trying to get the wounded treated and help anyone in need of their help. Even though he was seeing nothing by chaos at the moment, he had lived long enough to know that the village will bounce back from this tragedy. Just then an Anbu dropped down to the floor behind him and spoke. Lord Third, the Anbu said while kneeling down on the ground. The council has been called, the Anbu said. So, it begins, the Hokage thought to himself before he nods the Anbu and began making his way to the council chambers. With Tsunade. Tsunade and Shizune had taken Naruto over to the Senju clan compound. Tsunade had created a few shadow clones and ordered them to start packing both her and Shizune's stuff. While the clones were packing everything up, Tsunade and Shizune currently had Naruto laying on the sofa while they were standing around him staring at him as he slept with smiles on both of their faces. That's so cute, Shizune said, causing her sensei to chuckle. Oh, make sure the clones are packing all of your stuff. As soon as they are done, we are leaving, she said to her student, causing her to be a little surprised. Are we leaving so soon? She asked. Yeah, I rather we leave under all this chaos, that way we can slip with Naruto without anyone noticing anything, she said, causing Shizune to understand. Understood, Lady Tsunade, she said before she left the living room to make sure all of her stuff was ready. It took about an hour to get everything packed. Once packed, Tsunade and Shizune wrapped Naruto up in a nice warm blanket before they exited the Senju compound with Tsunade activating the security seals around the compound as they exited. Once outside, she took one last look at the compound before she shut the gates and activate the final seal main gate, which prevented anyone who was not of Senju blood from entering the compound. With the compound sealed, the two Kunoichi and baby dashed towards the main gate. Due to the chaos all around them, they managed to leave the village without anyone really seeing them. For those that did catch a glimpse of them, it was not enough to properly identify them or notice that they were carrying a baby. As they made it out of the village with no trouble, they began heading north. "Where are we going, Lady Tsunade?" Shizune asked as they were running through the trees. Without looking over at her student, Tsunade replied. "The fire capital," she said, surprising her student. They traveled for 2 days, making a few stops to feed and change Naruto along the way. They were extremely lucky that Minato and Kushina had bought a lot of baby supplies in advance. That saved them trouble to going to buy everything, and considering the state that the village was currently, she doubted that they would have been able to find any baby food or diapers, thankfully. That was not the case, and they could have continued their journey to the fire capital without taking any detours. Naruto for the most part was a good baby the entire journey there. He would only cry when hungry or when he needed to be changed, otherwise he did not make a sound. Tsunade had chalked it up to him being too caught up admiring the scenery around them. Tsunade and Shizune stopped at the entrance to the capital, admiring the scenery of all the rather large and expensive-looking buildings. The capital was where the extremely rich people in the Land of Fire lived, well, those except for the clans of the Leaf Village. "Come on, Shizune," Tsunade said before she began walking towards the entrance. "Right, Lady Tsunade," Shizune replied before following her teacher. Standing at the entrance of the capital were two samurai in black and white armor guarding the entrance. When they got closer, the two samurais stopped them. "Halt," called out of the samurais as he placed his hand on his katana strapped to his hip. "Do you have permission to enter the capital?" he said in a strong voice. "I don't need permission," Tsunade replied in an equally strong voice. "I am Tsunade Senju," she said as she flared her chakra slightly, causing the two guards to gasp in shock and unconsciously take a step back. "Forgive us, Lady Tsunade," one of them said. "We did not know," the other said before they let the group pass through the entrance. After that little setback, they continued their journey into the capital. "Do you have a house in the capital, Lady Tsunade?" Shizune asked as she looked at her teacher with a curious look on her face. "No, but I know someone who can help us find one," she replied as they continued to walk through the capital. They walked for another 10 minutes until they came upon what could only be described as a palace. Just like the entrance of the capital, there were samurai guards all over the palace. They were stopped in front of the palace by 4 guards. "Halt. State your business," one of the guards commanded. "I am here to see the Fire Lord," Tsunade said, causing Shizune's eyes to widen slightly. "That's who she knows," Shizune screamed in her head. "Is the Fire Lord expecting you?" the guard asked, to which Tsunade shook her head, said no. "Then I am afraid I am going to have to ask you to leave," he added as he waved them off, causing Tsunade to narrow her eyes. "Just go tell the Fire Lord that Tsunade Senju is here to see him," she said to guard, once again earning a gasp from all 4 of them. "Of course, Lady Tsunade," the samurai replied before he headed into the palace, leaving the other 3 behind. It was one of the perks of being a Senju, thanks to her grandfather and granduncle, and herself. The name was practically royalty in the Land of Fire, and in some cases even outside the Land of Fire. Tsunade, Shizune. And Naruto waited for about 5 minutes before the same guard came running back outside. "The Fire Lord will see you now, Lady Tsunade," he said before he began escorting the group into the palace. Shizune could not help but admire the sheer size of the palace. It was by far the biggest house she had ever seen. She doubted whether there was anything the size in the Leaf Village. They were led into a large room which had a rather large cushion in the middle, with 2 smaller ones in front of sitting on the large cushion with the Fire Lord himself, and all around the room were 12 shinobis standing on guard. These were the Guardian Shinobi 12. Their sole job is to protect the Fire Lord. "Tsunade. Long time no see," the Fire Lord said as he greeted Tsunade with a warm smile on his face. "How have you been?" he asked as he motioned them to sit down on the cushions in front of them, while at the same time taking note of the baby in Tsunade's arms. "I have been better," Tsunade replied before glanced at the 12 shinobis around the room. The Fire Lord got the message and turned his personal guards. "Leave us," he ordered as he waved his hand signaling them to leave the room. After they all left, the Fire Lord looked back at Tsunade and spoke. "I just received word of what transpired in the Leaf," he said as he let out a sigh. "Yes, it is most unfortunate, but they will rebuild stronger than they were before. They always do," she replied, causing the Fire Lord to nod his head in agreement. "If you don't mind me asking, Tsunade," the Fire Lord said as he turned his attention to the baby in Tsunade's arms. "Who is this baby?" he asked, causing Tsunade to smile before she held up Naruto. "This is Naruto, my grandson," she said, causing the man's eyes to widen beyond belief. "Grandson?" he asked, causing her to nod. "I didn't even know you have a child, much less a grandchild," he said, causing Tsunade to chuckle. "I had a son when he was born. We changed his name because it was around the time where the other villages would send assassins to kill anyone with a Senju name, and if he took his father's name, it would have been easily linked by to me," she said, causing him to nod his head, understanding his precautions. "But you have met my son before," she said, surprising him while at the same time confusing him. "I have?" he asked with a confused look on his face. He was the Fire Lord, the people who he meets are all pretty powerful and high-ranking, so he cannot help but wonder just who Tsunade's son is. "He looks a lot like his father," she said as she held up Naruto for the Fire Lord to see. "His blonde hair and blue eyes are exactly like his father's," she said, causing the Fire Lord to stare at the baby for a few minutes before he realized who the baby looks like. "You're right, he does look like his father," he said with a chuckle. He then realized something else, which caused him to take on a more somber look before he spoke again. "Tsunade, I am truly sorry for your loss," he said, causing a sad look to appear on both Tsunade and Shizune's faces. "Thank you," she said in a soft tone. "I had to leave the village immediately because I didn't want anyone to find out about Naruto, and as a result, I will miss their funerals," she said. It had pained her to leave just like that and not say her final goodbyes to Minato and Kushina, but Naruto's safety took priority over her grief. "You traveled a long way to see me, Tsunade," the Fire Lord said, changing the subject. "I imagine it must be for a reason," he said, causing her to nod. "I was hoping if it is not too much trouble you could help me find a suitable place to buy here in the capital," she said, while looking at the Fire Lord. "Money is not an issue. I just want a place on the outskirts of the capital for us to live with a big enough space for me to train Shizune and Naruto when he is old enough," she added, causing the Fire Lord to think for a bit. "I am asking you mainly because you would be able to speed up the process of me acquiring the house," she said. "Why don't you just live here?" the Fire Lord suggested, causing Tsunade's eyes to widen in shock. She had never expected the Fire Lord to give her such an offer. "I am extremely grateful for the offer, my lord, but when training I tend to cause a lot of damage to the surrounding area, and we are currently in the middle of the capital," Tsunade said, causing the Fire Lord to nod his head in agreement, knowing very well about Tsunade's superhuman strength. "Very well, Tsunade," he said with a smile, "have it your way. I will have my assistant find you a suitable compound, but until then I insist you stay in the palace," he said, causing her to smile. "Very well, sir," she agreed, knowing very well that the man will not let it go. "However, sir, I must ask that you keep my presence here a secret. Not even the Hokage knows where I am," he said, surprising the man. "You didn't tell Sarutobi where you would be?" he asked in a surprised voice. "I told him I was going to leave and will send him a message through a more secured way of communicating of my exact location once I am settled," she said, causing him to nod once again, understanding the precaution she is taking. "What of young Naruto here?" he said as he looked down at the baby. "Will you be changing his name as well?" he asked. "For now, it will just be Naruto," she said with a smile. "When he is older, I will let him decide on what he wants his last name to be," she said, causing Fire Lord to raise an eyebrow at her. "Why not change his name as you did with his father?" he asked. "It is widely believed that I am the last Senju alive. Even if someone comes along claiming to be a Senju, I doubt anyone would take it seriously unless that someone is coming out of the Leaf Village," she said as she handed Naruto over to Shizune for a bit. "Back then with his father, I wasn't the only one left, there still a few members in the clan, so precautions needed to be taken. But right now everyone believes that with the exception of me all other Senjus are dead," she said, even though she was still slightly worried. "Well then, that does make sense, but please do be careful," he said, causing her to smile. "Let us head up to the residence and get you all settled in. My wife would probably kill me if I had you here and didn't bring you to see her," he said with a chuckle as they all stood up. They then walked to the door and pushed it open to see the same 12 shinobis standing outside the door guarding it. Without saying anything, the Fire Lord began walking towards the living quarters of the palace with Tsunade and Shizune, who were carrying Naruto, following behind him. 2 days later. Tsunade, Shizune, and Naruto had been starting in the palace of the Fire Lord for 2 days now. It had been a peaceful 2 days, to say the least. In the past 2 days, she got to spend a good amount of time with Naruto. It really helped her take her mind off Minato and Kushina. Shizune for the most was really in love with Naruto. He was like her little brother. She had always wanted to be a big sister, and now she is one. In the past 2 days, she was having a ball playing with Naruto. She found him absolutely adorable. After they had spoken 2 days ago, the Fire Lord had asked his assistant to look for a compound on the outskirts of the capital for Tsunade, and today they received word that they found one that fits her specifications. Tsunade had to admit that it was rather fast, but she guessed that is one of the perks of being the Fire Lord. Without hesitating, she gave the assistant the money necessary to purchase the property. By the end of the day, the transaction was complete. Tsunade wanted to set out right away for the house because she wanted Naruto to experience some level of normalcy instead of always moving around like they were doing, but the Fire Lord insisted that they spend one more night and he would have a carriage take them to the house in the morning. Tsunade eventually agreed and spent one more night in the palace. The Hidden Leaf Village. Sitting behind his desk with a tower of paperwork in front of him was the third Hokage. He had taken up back the position of Hokage. It has been 4 days since the Nine Tails attack. The rebuilding efforts in the village had already begun with everyone from jonins to everyday civilians helping out in the rebuilding efforts. They held a mass funeral yesterday for all those lost in the attack, while also burying the fourth Hokage and his wife as well. He had been slightly upset when he found out Tsunade had left without saying goodbye, but he understood she was only thinking about Naruto. Speaking of Naruto, he made no mention of Naruto being the Jinchuriki to neither the public nor the council. Thinking about the council meeting causes him to smirk at the reaction of his old teammate. Flashback. Council meeting. The council room was divided into 2 sections, the shinobi sections consisting of the clan heads and the civilian section consisting of a few rich civilians. They all sat in a straight line on either side of the room, with the Hokage seated at the head of both lines. Sitting behind the Hokage were his 2 advisors who were also 2 of his former teammates. "What of the Jinchuriki, Hiruzen?" asked Danzo as he spoke from the shinobi side of the room. "That is none of your concern, Danzo," the Hokage replied with a sigh, "and it is Lord Hokage when we are in this room." He added strongly. "Of course, Lord Hokage," Danzo said sounding as though it pained him to utter those words, "but I just wish to know who the Jinchuriki is so they could be trained into the perfect weapon for the village," he said, causing the Hokage and a few of the clan heads to scowl at him. "I just said it is none of your concern," Hiruzen said forcefully while at the same time flaring his chakra as well, making everyone in the room sweat a little, while some of the civilians were ready to pass out. "Next order of business," he added as he pulled his chakra back in. Flashback end. There was not a shadow of a doubt in the old Hokage's mind that it would not be the last time he would have to deal with Danzo concerning the whereabouts of Naruto, but no matter how much his old teammate pushes, he would not jeopardize Naruto's safety. He owed that much to Minato and Kushina after the sacrifice they made for the safety of the village. He could only hope Tsunade is able to keep Naruto safe and ensures he has a normal childhood wherever they are. The next day with Tsunade. As the Fire Lord had requested, Tsunade, Shizune and Naruto stayed an additional night in the palace. Now that it was morning, they were ready to leave. The Fire Lord had provided them a carriage to take them to their new home, instead of having them walk all the way to the outskirts of the capital. The 2 Kunoichis and baby who was currently in Tsunade's arms were standing in front of the palace entrance with a horse-drawn carriage behind them. Standing in front of Tsunade and Shizune were the Fire Lord and his wife, Madame Shijimi. They were there to see the group off. The Fire Lord had wanted to personally escort them to their new house, however. Tsunade told him that would only draw more attention to them. "Thank you for your kind hostility, sir," Tsunade said as both Shizune and she gave a slight bow. "Think nothing of it, dear," the Fire Lord said with a wave of his hand. "You all are welcomed in my home at any time," he said with a warm smile. "Yes, and do try not to be a stranger, Tsunade girl," Madame Shijimi said while holding a cat in her arms. "We won't," Tsunade replied with a smile. The 2 Kunoichis then turned around, entered the carriage with baby Naruto in tow. The carriage ride was peaceful and gave Shizune the opportunity to see more of the capital. At this time of the day, the capital was abuzz with people doing their early morning shopping. The thing that Shizune found incredibly interesting was the fact that everyone was wearing somewhat expensive clothes and jewelry in her opinion. It was as though everyone was going to a formal event with the way they were dressed, but Shizune soon came to realize that this was just the way things were in the capital. As the carriage drove by, people would often stop and point it due to the fact that the carriage had the Fire Lord symbol on either side of it. The carriage ride took 15 minutes before it came to a stop in front of a rather large compound with 3 houses inside of it. "We are here, Lady Tsunade," the driver said as he opened the carriage door. As they exited the carriage, the 2 Kunoichis saw that they were in front of a small compound with 3 houses surrounded by a concrete wall about 10 feet high. "Thank you for bringing us here," Tsunade said as she turned away from the compound and looked at the driver. The driver gave a small bow before he got back onto the carriage and drove off. Tsunade and Shizune walked up to the gate and unlocked it with the keys that she got from the Fire Lord's assistant. As they entered the compound, they could not help but admire the beauty of everything. There were 3 houses in the compound. The one in the center was bigger, the other 2 signifying it as the main house, while the other 2 were guest houses. Around the entire property were perfectly cut grass and a cobblestone walkway leading from the main gate to the 3 houses. Lining the walls around the property was a bed of flowers that seemed to go all the way around the compound. Deciding to check out the interior of the house, Tsunade began walking towards the main house, with Shizune following behind with Naruto in her arms. As they entered the house, they were surprised to see that it was fully furnished. Tsunade had thought that they would have to buy all the furniture they would need, but it seems as though the Fire Lord had an additional reason for making them stay an extra night in the palace. My, quite the house this is, came a male voice from behind the duo, causing the two Kunoichis to panic slightly. Tsunade immediately went into attack mode and spun around, getting ready to deal with their sudden intruder. Upon turning around to face the intruder, Tsunade came face to face with her old teammate Jiraiya standing in behind them with a stupid grin on his face. "Jiraiya!" Tsunade shouted in anger, causing the Toad Sage to grin wider. "Miss me, Suna?" he asked while grinning. "In your dreams, you stupid pervert," Tsunade replied as she relaxed a bit. "How the hell did you find us?" she asked as they all walked into the house. "I had my spies everywhere looking out for you," he said as they walked into the living room and sat down on the couch. "It wasn't until 3 days ago that I got word of someone matching both you and Shizune's description spotted in the capital," he said as he took Naruto from Shizune and held him in his arms. "I got here yesterday and heard that you entered the Fire Lord's palace," he said while making funny faces for Naruto, who was giggling away at his godfather's antics. "At first I thought you were going to be living there, but then this morning I saw you get in the carriage, so I followed it and ended up here," he added as he turned and grinned at her. Tsunade sighed and leaned back into the couch. "Hopefully, no one else knows him here," she said with a sigh. "Don't worry, I'm already spreading rumors of you being spotted in the lighting country," Jiraiya said, causing Tsunade to smirk. Jiraiya then pulled out a storage scroll from his robe and put some chakra into it, resulting in a puff of smoke appearing from the scroll. When the smoke dissipated, Jiraiya was holding a small stuffed orange toad in his hand. He began moving it around in front of Naruto, causing baby Naruto to giggle and began reaching up for the toad. "You like your gift, don't you?" Jiraiya said as he handed the stuffed animal to Naruto, who immediately hugged it tightly. Jiraiya then handed Naruto back to Shizune before he stood up and spoke. "I'm going to go place some security seals around the compound," he said, causing Tsunade to nod her head. "Thanks, Jiraiya," she said with a smile. "If you really want to thank me then maybe you could," he began before he broke out in a perverted giggle while staring at Tsunade's rather large breast, causing the medical ninja's eyebrow to twitch in annoyance. "Jiraiya!" Tsunade growled out before he sprung up from the couch and began chasing Jiraiya. Shizune just shook her head as she held onto Naruto. "Well Naruto, I guess this is our new home from now on," she said as she too got up from the couch with Naruto in tow, preparing to explore the house. It has been 5 years since the Nine Tails attack on the Hidden Leaf Village, and 5 years since Tsunade, Shizune, and Naruto had started living in the capital. Naruto was now 5 years old, and quite the handful. Tsunade did not know where the boy got all that energy from. It was like he was running on an infinite supply of entry that never runs out. Ever since he learned how to crawl, you could not leave him alone for a second, or else when you get back you will notice he vanished. It nearly gave his grandmother and his big sister a heart attack the first time it happened. They were changing him on Tsunade's bed when they turned around for a second to grab a new diaper. When they turned back, Naruto was no longer on the bed. Instead, he was on the floor trying to make a break for the open door. That habit of his only got worse when he learned how to walk. At that point, there was no stopping him. The only thing that Naruto would sit still for was ramen. It drove Tsunade crazy how the boy seemed to have inherited his mother's love for ramen. The past 5 years had been incredibly peaceful for the trio, well as peaceful as it could get with Naruto around. Nothing too interesting happened in the last 5 years. Even though they have been living in the capital for 5 years, they rarely ever left the compound. When they do leave, it is always under a disguise, mainly the transformation jutsu. In the case of Naruto, who had yet to unlock his chakra, they would normally have him wear a hat to his spiky blonde hair and some makeup on his face to hide the whisker marks. Naruto did not really care about the makeup. He was simply happy to be able to go outside, even though there was no incident in the past 5 years with anyone recognizing them. Tsunade did not want to take any chance when it came to Naruto, so she always made sure they were in disguises. As mischievous as he was, he would always listen to his grandmother and big sister, no matter what, so, when they told him to never go outside without them, he listened. Over the years, the Fire Lord's wife, Madame Shijimi, would come by the compound to visit regularly, and sometimes Tsunade would even take Naruto to the palace with her. When she goes to visit the Fire Lord, Naruto always enjoyed when Madame Shijimi would come to visit because that would mean that he would get to play with her pet cat, Tora. The cat likes to run around, and so does Naruto. By the end of her visit, Tora would be so tired that she would just collapse into either Naruto or Madame Shijimi's arms. Currently, Naruto was sitting at the dining room table with a history book in front of him. Tsunade and Shizune started teaching Naruto how to read at the age of 3, and by the time he turned 4 he was able to read all on his own. Now that he is 5, his level of reading only increased to a point where they could give him more advanced reading materials, like the history book he was reading, while Naruto to doing his reading, which is something Tsunade made sure he did every day. Tsunade was in the kitchen fixing lunch, and Shizune was in the backyard training. Naruto then closed his book before carefully climbing down from the chair, which was too high up for him to begin with. He then took his book and ran upstairs to put it in his room before coming back down carrying some of his toys. He was wearing an orange t-shirt with the Senju clan symbol on the front with a pair of short blue pants. "Grandma, can I go play in the backyard?" Came the voice of a young Naruto as he walked into the kitchen and looked up at his grandma. Tsunade turned and looked at him to see him carrying training kunai and shurikens, as well as the orange stuffed toad that Jiraiya had given him. "Did you finish your reading?" Tsunade asked sternly while looking at him. "Yes, I read 2 full chapters," he said as he held up 2 of his little fingers forming the peace sign. "Very well," she said, causing him to grin and run out through the back door in the kitchen. "Thank you, Grandma," Naruto shouted as he ran out the back door. At first, Naruto used to call both Tsunade and Shizune mommy, but when he was 3 Tsunade told him that she was his grandmother and Shizune was more like his big sister. Since then, he started calling her grandma and Shizune big sis. She did not explain to him that his parents were dead until a year ago when he began asking why his mom and dad do not come to visit. It was a painful conversation, but it was one that they were going to have at some point. She also told him who his mother was, but she did not tell him who his father was as yet. She was planning to do that when they tell him about the 9 tails sealed inside of him. She wanted to tell him sooner rather than later, to allow him to grow up with this knowledge, so that he could better prepare himself for the life ahead of him. Right now, she was just waiting for her old teammate Jiraiya to show up to be here when she tells him. The old pervert would usually stop by once every couple of months, sometimes even a few times a month when he was not busy. She was also waiting for him to arrive so that they could unlock Naruto's chakra so that she could begin his training. She wanted him present in case the 9 tails decide to try and break out. Letting out a sigh, she just shook her head and watched her grandson in the backyard from through the kitchen window. The backyard of the compound was rather large and ideal for training. There were 2 large trees in the backyard, one on either side of the yard. Under the tree to the right was a small koi pond that Naruto loves to play around. When he arrived outside, he saw his big sister training over to the left. She was throwing some rather big needles at the training dummy. There were 2 training dummies in the backyard, one tied to either tree, with his big sister using the on the left. Naruto decided to go to the other one, so that he does not disturb her. Naruto sat all of his equipment down beside the koi pond before he picked up the orange stuffed toad and sat it down on one of the rocks around the pond and spoke to it. "Froggy, you stay here and watch," he said to the stuffed animal as he placed it down on the rock and turned it to face the training dummy. "That way it gets a good view." Shizune looked over and saw what her little brother was doing and could not help but smile. Naruto then grabbed his training shurikens and stood about 10 feet away from the training dummy. He placed 5 of the 10 shurikens down on the ground and held the other 5 in his hand, then one at a time he would throw them at the dummy. Of the first 5 that he threw, only 2 hit the target that was on the dummy, but they were nowhere close to the center. As for the other 3, they did not hit the dummy at all. 2 flew past on either side of the dummy because one embedded itself into the tree. Naruto pouted cutely when he saw only 2 of his shurikens hit the target. When he would watch his big sister and mother train, they would always hit the center every time they threw it. He wanted to be as good as they were. "Would you like me to help you with your shuriken training, Naruto?" Shizune asked as she walked over to her little brother, getting his attention. Naruto looked down at the ground for a bit before he nodded his head shyly, causing Shizune to ruffle his hair. She then proceeded to show Naruto how to properly hold a shuriken and how to properly throw it. "There, now you try throwing it again," she said as she stood behind him. "Okay," Naruto said with a determined look on his face before he held one of the shurikens the way his sister showed him. He then focused on the target painted on the training dummy before he flicked his wrist just like Shizune showed him. The shuriken hit the target but once again was not close to the center. Not giving up, Naruto picked up the remaining 4 shurikens and began throwing them at the dummy. This time they all hit the target, but only one managed to hit the bullseye. "Good job, Naruto," Shizune said as she ruffled his hair once again. "If you keep practicing, you're going to be hitting the center every time," she said, causing him to grin up at her. "Just you wait, I'm going to surpass you and Grandma in no time," he said with a wide grin on his face. "Is that so?" came the voice of Tsunade from behind the 2 of them, getting their attention. "Believe it," he shouted while flashing his grandmother a wide grin. "I'm going to be the strongest ninja that ever lived," he said while grinning. "Well, until then," Tsunade said as she scooped him up in her arms. "You are still my little Naruto," she said before she started tickling him, causing him to giggle. "Okay, time for lunch. You can play with your kunai and shurikens after," she said as she began walking back towards the house. "Wait," Naruto yelled, surprising the 2 women. "I can't leave Froggy," he said while pointing to his little stuffed toad still sitting on the rock. Shizune smiled and walked over the rock and picked up the small stuffed animal and took it to Naruto. "Here you go, Naruto," she said as she handed the toad to him. Thank you, Naruto said as he hugged the toad tightly, causing the two women to smile before they walked inside the house and sat Naruto down at the dining room table before heading to the kitchen to grab the food. Can I have ramen? He asked while looking at the two women in the kitchen. You already had ramen this week, his grandmother replied, causing his head to drop slightly in disappointment. Tsunade would only allow Naruto to eat ramen once a week. On the remaining days, she would ensure he had a healthy, balanced diet. Shizune and Tsunade took all the food to the dining room table and set it up, while Shizune placed a little bit of everything in front of Naruto so he could reach it easily before sitting down beside him, with her sensei sitting down across from her. As they were about to start eating, the voice of a man coming from the entrance of the dining room surprised everyone. "Oh, lunch," the man said, getting all of their attention. When they turned to look, they saw Jiraiya standing there with a grin on his face. "Jiraiya, pervy sage," Tsunade and Naruto said simultaneously. "How many times have I told you not to call me that, brat?" Jiraiya said as he sat down beside Shizune while Naruto just grinned at him. Naruto had started calling him pervy sage after hearing his grandmother call him a pervert and hearing Jiraiya referring to himself as the great toad sage. Combing the two, Naruto came up with pervy sage, much to the amusement of his big sister and grandmother and the annoyance of Jiraiya. "Did you bring me anything?" Naruto asked with an excited look on his face. Jiraiya just reached into his robe and pulled out a green wallet in the shape of a frog and tossed it at Naruto, who caught it and smiled. "Look, Froggy, you have a friend," Naruto said as he placed the green wallet next to his stuffed toad. The adults at the table could not help but smile at the boy's antics. "So, where are you coming from, Jiraiya?" Tsunade asked as he looked over at her old teammate while putting some rice in her bowl. "I just paid Saratobi Sensei a visit," he said as he took an empty bowl that was on the table and started taking food. "Reported to him about the happenings around the elemental nations," he said before he took a bite of his food. "Anything interesting happening?" Tsunade asked. "The Hidden Mist village is now in a full-blown civil war," Jiraiya replied. Tsunade was not really surprised by this, she had expected it to happen a long time ago. "Orochimaru was in the Lightning Country doing God knows what," he added, causing a scowl to appear on Tsunade's face at the mention of their other teammate. "Up to no good, I'm sure," she said lowly, causing Jiraiya to nod in agreement. Naruto was quietly eating while at the same time listening to his grandmother and godfather's conversation. "Any word on the masked Uchiha?" she suddenly asked, causing him to shake his head no. For the past 5 years, whenever Jiraiya would come to visit, she would ask if he heard anything about him, but he never did hear anything about the man. "Speaking of the Uchiha," Jiraiya suddenly said, "some of my spies from inside the Leaf Village are telling me that the grand population of the village is starting to suspect the Uchiha clan for the attack," he said, surprising Tsunade. "That's surprising," she replied as she looked at her teammate. "I know for sure that Sensei won't go spreading what I told him about that night to the grand public," she said. "You're right," Jiraiya replied with a nod. "It is likely someone from the shadows spreading rumors to start a conflict," he said, causing Tsunade to growl once more. "I wonder who would do such a thing," she said sarcastically, causing Jiraiya to chuckle slightly. "Speaking of which, I think it's time," she said as she looked at Jiraiya. "Time?" he asked with a confused look on his face. "Time for what?" he asked. "For us to talk to Naruto about you know what," she said, causing his eyes to widen slightly while getting Naruto's attention as well. "Are you sure?" he asked, thinking that it was slightly too soon. "Yeah, I rather him knowing now so he can properly prepare himself," she said, causing him to nod his head, understanding her train of thought. "Tell me what?" Naruto asked while looking at his grandmother and godfather with a confused look on his face. "Come with me, Naruto," Tsunade said as she got up from the table and lifted him up before heading over to the living room. Jiraiya and Shizune soon followed behind the two. Tsunade sat down on the couch and placed Naruto on her lap. Shizune then sat down to the right of her sensei, while Jiraiya chose to remain standing. "What is it you want to tell me?" Naruto asked while looking at his grandmother with a slightly worried look on his face. "I'm going to tell you about your dad and what happened to him," she responded with a soft smile. "My dad?" Naruto asked with a surprised look on his face. Whenever he had asked about his dad, his grandmother always told him that she will tell him when he was older. All he knew about his dad was that he looked like him and the fact that he died the night the giant fox attacked the Leaf Village along with his mom. "Yes, your dad," Tsunade replied with a smile. "Your dad was a shinobi in the Hidden Leaf Village. In your history books, do you remember reading about the Hokages?" she asked, causing him to think for a second. "Yeah," he answered with a nod before continuing. "Grandma's grandpa was the first Hokage, her granduncle was the second Hokage, and her sensei is the third Hokage," he asked while holding up 3 fingers. "Then there was the fourth Hokage, he was the coolest of them all. He beat up the giant fox and saved everyone," Naruto said enthusiastically, causing the adults to chuckle. "Yes, that's right," she said as she ruffled his hair slightly. "Well, you see Naruto, your father's name was Minato Namikaze, and he was the fourth Hokage," she said, dropping a bomb on poor little Naruto who had his mouth hung open. "My dad is the fourth Hokage," Naruto asked in a startled voice. That's so cool. Naruto yelled out with a big grin, causing Tsunade to shake her head at her grandson's antics. Sometimes he behaves like his father, but other times he is like his mother, but how come his last name is Namikaze and not Senju? Naruto suddenly asked. Well, you see, when your father was born, Grandma changed his last name to protect him, she explained, causing him to put his index finger to his chin and started to think. The adults around him found it absolutely cute. So, what is my last name then? He asked while looking at his grandma, causing her to smile. You get to choose if you want to be Namikaze or Senju, she said, causing him to ponder upon it for a few seconds before he gave his reply. I am going to be Naruto Senju. He yelled out with a wide smile on his face. It is the coolest. He added with a proud grin on his face before he started bouncing up and down on his grandmother's lap excitedly. Okay brat, settle down, I still have more to tell you, Tsunade said, getting him to calm back down. Now, as you just said, your father, the fourth Hokage, defeated the nine-tailed fox and saved the village, she said, causing him to nod. The thing is, that is not exactly true, she said, causing his eyes to widen slightly. The nine-tailed fox is a tailed beast, a creature made up entirely of chakra. She said while looking at her grandson. There is no way to truly kill a tailed beast, the only way to defeat it is to seal the beast into a human baby, she said before pausing and looked at Naruto. Seal it inside of a baby? He asked, causing her to nod her head. That's right, Tsunade replied with a nod. People with tailed beasts sealed inside of them are called Jinchurikis. Your mother was the previous Jinchuriki of the nine tails and my grandmother before that, she said, surprising Naruto once more. My mom had the nine tails inside of her? He asked in an astonished voice. Then who has the fox in them now? He asked while tilting his head to the side. In getting to that, Tsunade said, trying to ease him into it as much as she can. In order to defeat the giant fox and save the village, your father had to use a very powerful jutsu to seal the fox away in a newborn baby. However, the price for him using that jutsu was him dying after using it, she said, making Naruto slightly sad and proud at the same time. Your dad was an exceedingly kind person. He could never bring himself to ask someone else to give up their child to have the fox sealed into. It was something he could only do to his own child, she said, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in shock. Why you mean, I have that giant fox sealed inside of me? He asked, sounding slightly scared. He then lifted up his shirt and started poking his belly. Are you sure he is in there? He asked, causing the adults to chuckle at his antics. Yes, it is in there, Tsunade replied with a smile. Now I want you to understand something, Naruto, she said, seriously getting his attention. You are a Jinchuriki, and some people are going to treat you differently because of it, she said, confusing Naruto. There are people out there who believe that Jinchurikis are the tailed beasts themselves in human form, and they are typically afraid of them. So Jinchurikis are usually met with a lot of hate and hostilities, she said, causing him to look down slightly. So, people are going to hate me? He asked as tears began to well up in his eyes. Does that mean Grandma, big sister, and Pervy Sage are going to hate me too? He asked with tears streaming down his face, causing their eyes to widen. Of course not, sweetie, Tsunade said as she wrapped him in a hug. We will never hate you no matter what you do, she added. You are my cute little brother, it is impossible for me to hate you, Shizune said as he ruffled his hair. We will never hate you, Squirt, Jiraiya said while also ruffling his hair. Then I don't care who hates me. Naruto said as he wiped the tears from his eyes. As long as you guys don't hate him, I don't care about anyone else, he added between sniffs. One day I'm going to be super strong like Dad and Grandpa Hashi, and then everyone will have to like me. He declared boldly. That's the spirit, kid. Jiraiya said with a smile. Well then, how about we start your shinobi training then? Tsunade asked with a smirk, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in excitement. You mean that it is time for me to unlock my chakra? He asked in an overly excited tone as he started bouncing up and down on his grandmother's lap. He had wanted to unlock his chakra a year ago when he saw his big sister walking up the side of one of the trees in the backyard. He thought it was so cool. That's right, Squirt, Jiraiya said with a grin on his face. But before that, I have something for you, he said, confusing Naruto. He had already received a gift from the old pervert, so he was wondering what else the man had for him. Jiraiya reached into his robe and pulled out a small storage scroll. He then channeled some chakra into the scroll, causing a puff of smoke to appear. When the smoke disappeared, Jiraiya was holding a small picture frame. Here, he said as he handed it to Naruto. Looking at the picture his godfather handed him, Naruto saw that there were 5 people in the picture. It was a picture of his grandmother, big sister, and godfather, standing next to a man with spiky blonde hair and a pregnant red-haired woman. This is your dad, Jiraiya said while pointing to the blonde-haired man. This is your mom, he said as he moved his finger over to the red-haired woman. And that you in there, he said while pointing at the woman's pregnant belly. These are my parents. He asked as he stared at the picture, causing everyone to nod their heads. Can I keep this? He asked as he turned around to look at Jiraiya, who nodded his head. Naruto smiled before he hugged the picture frame tightly into his chest. Why don't you go put that in your room and let's go to the backyard to unlock your chakra, his grandmother said, causing him to nod his head eagerly before he climbed down from her lap and ran upstairs to his room. He placed the picture down on the nightstand next to his bed and looked at it for a few moments and smiled. "I'm going to make you guys proud," he said to the picture of his parents before he ran back out the room and down the stairs. When he got downstairs, he saw that his family was already in the backyard waiting for him. Not wanting to wait any longer, he dashed out the back door to the backyard where his grandmother and big sister were standing. They were in the exact center of the backyard waiting for Naruto. Jiraiya was standing there with a small square paper with a seal drawn onto it in his hands. It was a chakra-suppressing seal. He had it mainly as a precaution in case the Nine Tails decided to try and break free. He doubted whether the fox could break out of the seal, but wanted to be prepared just in case. "Okay, Naruto," Tsunade said as she saw her grandson join them in the backyard. "Sit down on the ground as though you are meditating," she said while pointing to the ground in front of her. Naruto nodded his head did his grandmother instructed. "Now close your eyes and meditate," she said, causing him to close his eyes and take a few deep breaths. "Look deep inside yourself for your chakra. It should give off a warm welcoming feeling," she added. "I feel it," Naruto replied after a few minutes of searching. "Good. Now reach out and grab it and pull it towards you," she said, remembering her sensei told her to do the exact same time. The three adults watched as Naruto suddenly stretched out his arms before he started grabbing at the air. This action by the little boy caused Shizune to giggle, while the two other adults' sweat dropped. "I can't hold it," Naruto replied after grabbing the air for a while. "We didn't mean try grabbing it with your hand, dummy," Jiraiya yelled out, causing Naruto to open his eyes and look at the man. "Then how am I supposed to grab it if not with my arms, you pervy sage?" Naruto yelled back before pouting cutely. "Naruto, try to pull it towards you with your mind," Shizune said with an amused smile on her face. "Okay, I'll try," Naruto replied before he closed his eyes and tried again. When he found the warm welcoming feeling deep inside himself, he began focusing on it, trying to pull it closer to him with his mind. Soon, he could feel the energy getting closer and closer to him, then suddenly heard some inside of him break, causing all the warm energy to rush throughout his body. He felt a warm sensation spread throughout his entire body. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune were looking at Naruto as all three of them sensed chakra spreading throughout his body. Soon Naruto was surrounded by light green chakra outlining his body. "He has as much chakra as an average genin," Tsunade commented in surprise seeing a 5-year-old with that much chakra. "Well, that is likely due to him being both a Jinchuriki and an Uzumaki," Jiraiya replied. Tsunade was about to say something else, but before she could speak, they all felt the ground tremble beneath their feet, causing them to put up their guard. What happened next took everyone by surprise. Bursting out from the ground behind Naruto was a decent-sized tree about a foot wide. The tree grew about 6 feet before branches with leaves started to grow out of the rather small trunk. Naruto then opened his eyes feeling super powerful due to him experiencing chakra for the first time. He looked down at his hand and made a fist, fully enjoying the feeling of power. "Man, I feel so powerful," he said in a happy tone as he began to stand up. "I feel like I could OE." He cried out as he banged his head against one of the branches of the tree as he stood up. "Who put a tree there?" he shouted as he turned and looked at his family who were all staring at him as though he grew a second head. "What?" he asked as he was kind of creeped out by the way they were all looking at him. "Jiraiya, that's," Tsunade said with her eyes wide as dinner plates and her mouth hung open. "Yeah?" Jiraiya replied with an equally astonished look on his face. "Grandfather's," Tsunade said. "Sure is," Jiraiya replied with a nod. "Amazing," Shizune whispered out staring at the tree. "Are you guys okay?" Naruto asked knocking them out of their stupor. "Do you have any idea what you just did, brat?" Jiraiya asked as he walked forward and began examining the small tree. "I just unlocked my chakra," Naruto replied wondering why the old man was fussing over a tree and what's up with that tree, it wasn't there before. He asked as he turned and looked at his grandmother. "Naruto, sweetie," Tsunade began as she walked over and knelt down in front of Naruto. "It would appear as though when you unlocked your chakra, you unlocked your bloodline as well," she said, causing him to tilt his head to the side cutely. "What's a bloodline?" he asked making Tsunade recall the fact that they had not gotten to that part of his studies as yet. "Bloodlines are special abilities passed down genetically within specific clans," she explained as best she could to a 5-year-old. "It is like the Uchiha clan Sharingan or your great-great-grandfather's would release," she said, causing his eyes to light up in excitement. "You mean I have some kind of special powers?" he asked with a large, excited grin on his face, causing his grandmother to smile slightly. "Yes, it would appear as though you have somehow inherited your great-great-grandfather's wood release," she said with a sigh. "Haha. I told you I'm going to be as cool as Grandpa Hashi," Naruto said with a wide grin as he turned to look at the tree. "Lady Tsunade," Shizune called out getting her teacher's attention. "How come Naruto has the first Hokage's bloodline when no one else in the Senju clan has ever awakened it?" She asked the question that was actually in both Jiraiya and Tsunade's minds. I haven't the slightest clue, Shizune, she replied before turning her attention back to Naruto, and I don't have any of our medical equipment here for us to study a sample of his DNA to see just what is different between his and mine, she stated. For now, let's just focus on his training and worry about all that later, Jiraiya said as he stopped studying the tree and turned to Tsunade. As he said that, a thought suddenly struck Tsunade, causing her eyes to widen. We don't have any of grandfather's wood jutsus here, she said as she stared at Jiraiya. They are all locked away in the Senju clan compound, she stated, causing her old teammate to sigh. Can't I just go get them? He asked with a puzzled look on his face, to which she shook her head no. No, the compound is currently locked behind some pretty complex security seals that Grandma Mito brought with her from the Uzumaki clan. Only those with Senju blood and chakra can unlock it, she stated. What if you give me some of your blood and store some of your chakras in a special seal, Jiraiya suggested, causing Tsunade to shake her head no once more. No, Grandma Mito had planned for someone attempting that in advance. In addition to Senju blood and chakra, you need to plus the chakra in a specific pattern to unlock the seals, she said with a sigh, amazing Jiraiya. Well, for now, let us just teach him what we can, Jiraiya said as he folded his arms. Whenever either you or he decide to go back to Leaf, he can learn his wood release then, he added, causing her to nod her head. She was not ready to return right now, because Naruto was not able to defend himself as yet. Maybe when he can properly defend himself, he can go back, she thought to herself. Boy! Naruto shouted, getting their attention. Are you guys going to train me now? He asked, getting tired of waiting. Sure, thing squirt, Jiraiya replied before reaching up and plucking two of the leaves off the tree and handed one to Naruto. The first thing you need to learn how to do is to make this leaf stick to your forehead using chakra, he said as he placed his leaf on his forehead and channeled some chakra to the spot where the leaf is, making it stick in place. Naruto saw what his godfather did and tried to duplicate it, but much to his annoyance, it would not stay on his forehead, knowing that will take him a while to get it to stick, especially with his level of chakra. The three adults decided to go sit down on some of the chairs that they had in the backyard and watch him. 1 week later. It took Naruto 2 days to figure out how to get the leaf to stick to his forehead and stay there. For the remaining 5 days his grandmother had him focusing on sticking multiple leaves all over his body at the same time, as a better way to increase his control. Jiraiya had stayed for a few days before leaving to tell the Hokage about Naruto unlocking his chakra. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya had agreed that they should keep Naruto's bloodline a secret from the Hokage for now, mainly due to the fact that they did not want to risk someone overhearing that kind of information. Seeing as how Naruto had mastered the leaf balancing exercise, Tsunade thinks it is time she taught him the tree climbing exercise. Naruto, who was currently sitting under the tree next to the koi pond with 3 leaves stuck to his forehead, one on either cheek and one in the center of his chest, saw his grandmother walking towards him. His big sister was sitting under the other tree reading book on medical ninjutsu. Naruto, it is time for you to learn the next exercise, Tsunade said, getting Naruto excited. I'm going to teach you how to walk up the side of a tree, she said before she moved him out of the way. She then placed on foot on the trunk of the tree and began walking up the tree as though she was walking on the ground. Wow. Naruto said as he started bouncing up and down, that's so cool. He added with stars in his eyes. Tsunade chuckled at her grandson's behavior before hopping down from the tree. All you have to do is channel some chakra to the bottom of your feet and walk up, she said as she moved out of the way for him to try. Naruto did as his grandma said before placing one foot onto the tree trunk. As he tried to place the other foot on the tree, he fell down flat on his behind, causing his grandmother and big sister to laugh at him. Keep trying, Tsunade said before she left to check on Shizune's studies. 2 weeks later. It had taken Naruto about 4 days to complete the tree walking exercise, and similarly to when he completed the leaf balancing exercise, his grandmother made him spend the remaining of the week running up and down the tree to build up his reserve and better his control. Once that week had passed, Tsunade made him spend an extra week running up and down the tree while balancing leaves and pebbles on his forehead and body to better his control. For the boy who was always filled with energy, at the end of every day, he would be completely tired. Currently, everyone was inside the house. Tsunade had decided to give Naruto a day to relax before she really kicks his training into gear. Tsunade was in the kitchen doing the dishes while Shizune was standing behind her staring at Naruto with her mouth open. Lady Tsunade, Shizune said, getting their sensei's attention. Do you think it was a good idea teaching Naruto how to walk up trees? She asked, confusing her sensei. What do you mean if it was a good idea? Tsunade asked as she continued to wash the dishes. It is a necessary skill to learn for every shinobi, she added. I know that, I'm just wondering if you are regretting teaching him it. She asked, causing Tsunade to scrunch up her forehead in confusion. Why would she began as she turned around to question Shizune. As she turned around, she saw Naruto running up and down the walls and all over the ceiling, with a wide smile on his face, as he left a trail of shoe prints behind him. Tsunade's eyebrows started to twitch violently before she shouted out, "Naruto!" She yelled. 7 years had passed since Naruto unlocked his chakra and discovered that he had inherited his great-great-grandfather's bloodline. Naruto had advanced leaps and bounds in the last 7 years. He had as close to perfect chakra control as he could possibly get thanks to his grandmother and big sister, putting him through the ringer when it comes to chakra control exercise. Immediately after mastering the walking on water exercise, his mother put him through some more advanced chakra control exercises that are usually taught to those who want to learn medical ninjutsu. As a result of his close to perfect chakra control, his grandmother and big sister trained him in medical ninjutsu. When his chakra reserve had increased to a sizable amount, Tsunade decided to teach him the shadow clone jutsu to help speed up his training a bit. To say that by creating a few clones every day and having them train alongside Naruto sped up his training would be an understatement, even though Naruto had the chakra necessary for him to create hundreds of shadow clones at any given time. Tsunade limited him to no more than 20 clones at a time, that way they all could train in the compound and not get in each other's way, and also avoid Naruto suffering serious backlash from them dispelling. So, every day for the past 5 years Naruto would make about 15 clones, 5 of them read books and scrolls about medical ninjutsu. Another 5 would read a few books on Fuinjutsu which Jiraiya would bring for him, and the remaining 5 would train with the original and Tsunade in either Taijutsu or Ninjutsu. Once the clones ran out of reading material, Naruto instructed them to train in his chakra nature. It was the first thing Tsunade and Jiraiya checked after he had completed his water walking exercise. As it turns out, Naruto had an affinity for 3 chakra natures, with the wind nature being his main type while water and earth being secondary. Tsunade and Jiraiya had expected the earth and water, but the wind was a complete surprise to them. Thanks to his clones, Naruto had already done the necessary exercise to better control each of the 3 chakra natures, but he was not pleased with that. He wanted to take it to the next step to better his control over each chakra nature. Over the past 7 years, Naruto found time in between all of his training that his family put him through to practice his wood release. Even though he did not have his great-great-grandfather's scrolls and techniques with him, he would like to believe that his control over his wood release is fantastic, but unfortunately, there is no way for him to truly tell until he sees his great-great-grandfather's scrolls. His grandmother would often tell him that he reminded her of her grandfather when she would watch him create trees and all kinds of wooden constructs, even though he did not have his great-great-grandfather's scrolls. It did not stop Naruto's imagination from aiding him in creating a few techniques for him to use. Now Naruto was 12 years old and he was a competent medic, a seals master that could give Jiraiya a run for his money, and a pretty powerful shinobi that could kick an average jonin's ass. Well, technically he was not a shinobi as yet due to the fact that he has not taken the graduation exam as yet. Currently, Naruto was standing inside of his bedroom looking around at the now empty room. He had packed up all of his things barring the bed to take with him to the Hidden Leaf village. His grandmother had decided that it was time for him to return to the village so that he can take the graduation exam with people who were his age, apparently. She had already sent word to the Hokage that he will be returning, and the Hokage agreed to let Naruto take the graduation exam, even though he has never stepped foot into the academy. "I sure am going to miss this place," Naruto said to himself with a smile as he looked around the real all the memories he had there. At 12 years old he now stood 56 taller than anyone his age. His spiky blonde hair had gotten longer over the years to the point where it was exactly like his father's. He was wearing black shinobi pants with a matching pair of black shinobi sandals. He wore a black uniform jacket with orange buttons going down the middle and on the end of the sleeves. Around his right bicep was a red armband with a kanji for 9 on it, and on the back of the uniform jacket was the Senju clan symbol in orange. He had the top 2 buttons of his jacket opened, revealing his great-great-grandfather's necklace which his mother gave to him, It basically his outfit from the last Naruto the movie. The only difference is the pants are black and the Senju clan symbol on his back. "Are you done yet, brat?" came the voice of Tsunade knocking him out as reminiscing. I'm coming," Naruto replied with a smile before walked out of his room and closed the door. He then made his way downstairs and to see his big sister and his grandmother waiting for him there. "Do you have everything?" Tsunade asked as she looked at him with one hand on her hip. "Yes, everything is stored in the storage scrolls, and the storage scrolls are stored in the storage seal on my wrist," he said as he pulled up his right sleeve, revealing a storage seal tattoo on his wrist. "Good, Sarutobi Sensei is expecting you," she said, causing him to nod his head. Tsunade and Shizune were not going with him to the Leaf Village. Instead, they are going to be touring around the Fire Country for a bit before they make their way to the village. It was mainly due to them being cooped up in the Fire Capital for the past 12 years, with 7 of those 12 years was spent training Naruto into the ground. If anything, they deserved a short break. "It'll be there," he replied with a smile. "The Chunin exams are going to be held in the Leaf this year, we will arrive there a few days before the finals," she said, causing Naruto to fold his arms across his chest before he spoke. "Are you going to be coming to Leaf to see me or are you just going cause that's where all the gambling happening?" He asked with a small pout causing Shizune to giggle at her brother's behavior. Tsunade on the other hand had a different reaction, she punched him right in the face, sending him flying back into the stairs destroying it in the process. "Care to repeat that question, brat?" Tsunade asked threateningly. "You know with me no longer around," Naruto began as he pulled himself from the rubble of the stairs and dusted himself off. "I wonder who is going to fix all of your messes," he said before channeling some chakra into his foot and stomping it on the ground. As soon as he did that, wooden beams broke through the floor and formed a new flight of stairs to replace the old one. "With you gone I won't have a reason to be making any mess," Tsunade retorted with a smirk on her face. "Oh, you know you are going to miss me," Naruto said as he walked up to his grandmother. She smiled at him before pulling him into a warm hug. "Be safe," she whispered while hugging him and fighting back tears at the same time. "I will," Naruto replied as he broke the hug and turned to his big sister who already had tears streaming down her face. "I'm going to miss you, Naru," she said as latched onto Naruto. "Big sis, you're acting as though you're not going to see me again," Naruto said as he tried to comfort his sister. I know," she said as she let go of him and wiped away her tears. "Good, now where is Taunton?" he asked as he began looking around for Shizune's pet pig that she got 2 years ago. "Boink," squealed the little pig as she ran out of the itching towards the living room after hearing her name being called. "Now Taunton, I am leaving both of them in your care, try to keep them out of trouble," he said as he knelt down petted the pig's head. "Boink," the pig replied while pointing her snout up in the girl, causing Naruto to smile. "Good," he said before he stood up and pulled both Shizune and Tsunade in for one final hug. "I should head out now," he said as he let them go. "Send us a message when you get there and try to stay out of trouble," Tsunade said causing him to grin. "I always stay out of trouble," he replied as he made his way to the door causing the two women to sweat drop. They walked up behind him as he exited the door and stood in the doorway as they watched him leave the compound. "Is he going to be okay?" Shizune asked as she stared at Naruto walking away. "I think the question you should be asking is if the village is going to be okay," Tsunade said with a chuckle knowing her grandson's tendencies. Naruto was taking in the scenery of the streets of the capital as he walked by. This was the first time he was walking outside the compound without either his big sister or his grandmother with him. Smiling to himself he placed both of his hands in his pocket, continued making his way to the main entrance of the capital. It took about 15 minutes for him to get to the main entrance, considering he was simply walking and taking in the sights. When he reached the gate entrance, he saw that there were 2 samurai guards standing on either side of the entrance guarding it. When the guards saw him approaching, they stood at attention. They were quite familiar with who Naruto was due to the fact that Tsunade, Shizune, and he would frequently visit the Fire Lord and his wife at the palace. "Greetings, Lord Senju," both guards said simultaneously causing Naruto to nod his head and wave at them as he walked out of the entrance. He was quite accustomed to people calling him Lord Senju by now, after the guards and palace servants would do it every time he visited there. His grandmother told him to get used to it because it was what people would be calling him back at the Leaf. Naruto took 3 steps outside of the capital before he stopped and stared at the lush forest ahead of him. It was at that moment he recalled something. He had not the slightest clue how to get to the Leaf Village. Deciding to ask one of the guards, he turned around and spoke to them. "Can either one of you tell me how to get to the Leaf Village?" he asked as he looked at them. The guards looked at each other for a second before the one on the right spoke up. "It is directly south of the capital," he said while looking at Naruto. "It is about a 2 to 3 days journey from here depending on your speed," he said, causing Naruto to nod his head before he spoke. "Thank you," Naruto said before he turned and started walking south. This was the first time he was outside of the capital. He was going to take his time and truly soak in the scenery around him. He walked through the forest for about 5 hours before his stomach started grumbling. "Guess it's time for lunch," he said as he stopped and began looking around to find a place for him to eat. Soon the sound of running water invaded his ear, causing him to turn his attention to the left and began walking in the direction of the sound. He walked for about 5 minutes before coming to the edge of a riverbank. "This is a nice place to eat," he said before he plopped himself down on the grass at the edge of the bank and flicked his wrist activating the storage seal. 1 second later, with a puff of smoke, Naruto was revealed holding a small storage scroll in his hand. He opened the scroll and placed it down in front of him before he sent some chakra into the seal, creating another puff of smoke. The only difference was when the smoke disappeared this time 2 large bowls of ramen were in front of Naruto still piping hot. Got the love storage seals, he thought to himself as he picked up a pair of chopsticks and one of the bowls before digging in. It took him 5 minutes to finish both bowls of ramen, and by Naruto standards that was him taking his time. After he finished, he resealed the empty bowls into the storage seals and then stood up, turned around, and began making his way back from where he came from. He walked for a couple of minutes before he stopped and looked to the right, then the left, then in front of him, and then behind him. I have no idea which direction I came from and which direction I'm supposed to be going in, Naruto said to himself as he looked around him. Everything looked the same to him, and he was fairly sure he was not where he started before making his way to the riverbank. Well, this suck, he said with a sigh as he ran his hand through his hair. I'm pretty sure I came from over there. He said while pointing to the right, and I am supposed to be heading south, which is in that direction, I think, he said while pointing to the left. Oh well, life is just one big adventure I guess, he said with a shrug before he started heading to the left. He walked for about 2 hours before he exited the forest and joined a dirt road that seems to cut through the forest. 2 days later. It was currently nightfall, and Naruto was standing in the forest in the middle of a forest still yet to reach the Hidden Leaf village, and he was starting to get frustrated. The dirt road that he was previously on led him to Tenzaku quarters. He was so caught up in admiring the scenery around him that he did not notice the road he was on twisted and turned and all directions leading off the course he was supposed to be on. After spending a night in Tenzaku quarters, he set out at full speed this time for the Leaf village after getting some direction from the lady at the inn that he stayed the night in. However, even at full speed, she told him it would still take him 2 days. It had been 3 days since he left the capital, and he knew the Hokage was expecting him in the village. If he did not arrive there soon, he was sure the man would send out a search party for him. Thinking the worst had happened, Naruto could not allow that to happen, it would be too embarrassing. I am starting to believe that they don't call these villages hidden villages for no reason, he said as he sighed and resumed walking through the forest. He took about 5 steps before coming to a halt and narrowing his eyes. He can sense 2 people's chakra signature fluctuating some distance to the right of him and could hear the faint sounds of metal hitting against metal. It was clear to him that someone was fighting over in that direction. Letting curiosity get the better of him, Naruto placed both of his hands in his pocket and took on a serious look on his face before calmly walking in the direction of the 2 chakra signatures. He knew he would mind his own business, but given the fact that he knew he was somewhat pretty close to the Leaf village, he decided to check to see if it is a Leaf shinobi engaging some enemy shinobi. Judging from their chakra, he can tell that it was 2 Chunins, so he was not worried about himself being in any kind of danger. When he carried to the location where he had sensed the fighting taking place, he saw Chunins from the Leaf village fighting each other, and by the looks of it, they were not sparring. Looking on from behind one of the trees, it was quite clear that one of the 2 was clearly outmatched, judging by the number of wounds present on his body, while the other had some but still far fewer injuries. The thing however that Naruto took note of was the fact that the one with the least number of injuries was carrying a scroll that Naruto thought was oddly familiar. If I am not mistaken, that is great-great-grandfather's scroll of sealing, or otherwise known as the Forbidden Scroll, he noted as he stared at the scroll. It would appear as though one if not both of them stole the scroll, he hypothesized as he observed the 2 Chunins, deciding that it was time to make himself known and have some fun. He walked out from behind the trees whistling with a carefree expression on his face as he strolled up to the 2 Chunins, getting their attention. My, what do we have here?" Naruto asked in a carefree manner, causing the 2 Chunins to be on guard. 2 Chunins from the Leaf village, trying to kill each other, he noted with a disappointed shake of his head, very unbecoming of comrades. He mocked before turning his attention to the scroll. "And would you look at this, the Forbidden Scroll as well," he said in a fake shocked voice. "I guess there is a traitor or maybe even traitors in our midst," he said as he looked between the 2 of them. What to do? He asked in a carefree tone, putting the 2 men on edge. "Who the hell are you, kid?" yelled the one carrying the scroll, getting Naruto's attention. "Me?" Naruto asked while pointing to himself. "I'm just a passerby who got lost on his way to Leaf village," he said with a shake of his head before his face brightened up a bit. "You 2 wouldn't mind escorting me to the village, would you?" he asked as he looked at them with a fake hopeful look on his face. Naruto's carefree attitude about the whole situation was really putting the 2 men on edge. "What are you doing?" shouted the one who was more injured. "Run before he kills you," he yelled. In Iruka's mind, that was just a boy in front of them, a boy who was about to get himself killed. Hearing Iruka warning the boy, Mizuki gained some confidence. Seeing Iruka worried about the boy's safety, it made him believe that Iruka thought that he could easily kill the boy. "Too late for that, boy," Mizuki said with a murderous look in his eye. "I'm going to kill you, then kill Iruka and make my escape to Lord Orochimaru," he yelled out with a crazy look on his face, as though he had gone mad. "Soon. Very soon I'll have all the power in the world. Ha 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 ha," he said before finishing with a maniacal laugh. I'm sorry, but I am afraid that I am still going to need you to escort me to the village, Naruto said before the grin on his face disappeared and was replaced with a dangerous look on his face, and you are going to by force if necessary, he added as he flared his chakra, causing his body to be surrounded by a green outline and the pressure in the surrounding area to increase. Mizuki and Iruka's eyes widened in shock at the amount of chakra that was being released by the guy in front of them. Just who the hell are you? Mizuki shouted with fear ever so present in his voice. Naruto stared at him, made a single hand seal and spoke. Wood style. Wood binding jutsu. He said in a low voice while holding the snake hand seal. As he said that a large tree branch with leaves on it burst out from the ground under Mizuki's feet and coiled its way around the Chunin, binding him in place. It happened so fast that the Chunin could not react fast enough to escape. Naruto then narrowed his eyes before he added a bit more chakra, causing the tree branch to tighten its grip on Mizuki. Hhhhh. Mizuki yelled out in pain as he felt the coil get tighter. Please, let me go, and I promise I won't cause you any trouble, I swear, Mizuki begged with tears streaming down his face, causing Naruto to chuckle darkly at him. No, I don't think so, Naruto replied as he let go of the hand seal and began walking towards the duo. I've heard wonders of the Hidden Leaf's torture and interrogation division, headed by a man called Ibiki, Naruto said, causing the color to drain from the traitorous Chunin's face. I think I will let him deal with you, he said with a smirk before walking over to Iruka, causing the injured Chunin to break out from his shock of seeing the first Hokage's bloodline. Do not panic, I am just going to heal your wounds, Naruto said as he knelt down beside Iruka and began healing the shinobi with medical ninjutsu. Thank you, Iruka said with a grateful smile on his face. Naruto nodded his head and just continued to heal him. While healing Iruka, Naruto created 2 shadow clones without using a single hand seal. One clone went over and picked up the forbidden scroll and brought it over to Naruto, while the other went over and severed the bottom on the tree branch that was binding Mizuki so that they could transport him. Upon severing the branch, Mizuki fell over while still bounded, hitting his head pretty hard against the ground, knocking him out. After he finished healing Iruka, Naruto stood up and picked up the forbidden scroll. Iruka was about to say something to him about the scroll, but before he could, a tree branch similar to the one binding Mizuki burst up from the ground and wrapped itself around him as well. What is the meaning of this? Iruka asked. It's nothing personal, it's just a precaution, Naruto said with a shrug. For all I know, the two of you are in on this together, and he betrayed you, he said, while creating 2 more shadow clones to carry Iruka, while the 2 from earlier would carry Mizuki. When we get to the village, the Hokage will decide if you are innocent or not, he added before signaling the clone to pick them up. Which direction is the village in? He then asked while looking at Iruka. Straight ahead, Iruka replied, causing Naruto to nod his head before he began walking in the direction of the village with his 4 clones, carrying the 2 Chunins behind him. He walked in silence for about 15 minutes before the village walls came into view. Naruto could not help but smile at the fact that he had finally arrived at the village. So, this is the Hidden Leaf village, he said as they approached the entrance. As they were approaching the entrance, about 6 shinobis, all ranging from Chunin to Jonin, appeared in front of the gate, ready to confront Naruto. Naruto was not really all that worried about the 6 of them. He continued walking towards the gate without a care in the world. Halt and identify yourself. A Jonin wearing dark sunglasses ordered. Who the hell wears sunglasses at night? Naruto asked in a confused tone as he continued to walk towards them. The sunglass-wearing Jonin was named Abisu, and he was slightly ticked off that the kid carrying the forbidden scroll just ignored his order. I said halt and identify yourself. Abisu repeated a bit louder this time. Alright, Naruto. Naruto said with a carefree smile on his face as he stopped in front of the group. Can all of you move out of the way? I got an appointment with the Hokage that I am a few days late for. It would be incredibly impolite to keep him waiting for any longer, he said with a smile. The 6 shinobi all looked at each other, unsure what to do. And what business do you have with the Hokage, brat? One of the Chunin asked. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that the Hokage's business was any of your business, Naruto replied with a carefree smile still on his face. The Chunin who had asked the question growled when he heard Naruto's reply. Just who the hell does this little brat think he is? He thought to himself in anger. Now all of you have 2 options here. You can either escort me to the Hokage, he said with a smile before wiping the smile from his face and replacing it with a serious look as he narrowed his eyes and flared his chakra slightly, or get the hell out of my way, he said lowly, causing some of the Chunins to take a step back, including the one who spoke up earlier. We will escort you to Lord Hokage, another Jonin said, getting everyone's attention. Naruto looked over at him and saw that he had a senbon needle in his mouth. Naruto smiled at him and suppressed his chakra once more. The group of shinobi then escorted Naruto to a large red building with fire written on the front. In front of the building were even more Chunins and Jonins, and standing behind them all was an old man wearing a white robe. Lord Hokage. This boy approached the southern gate with the forbidden scroll in hand, along with Mizuki and Iruka as his captives. Ibisu yelled out, getting everyone's attention. He claims to have an appointment with you, he added, causing the Hokage to raise an eyebrow and walk to the front of the group of shinobi to see who had an appointment with him. When he got to the front of the group, he gasped in shock at the boy standing before him. It was as though he was staring at a younger version of the fourth Hokage. It was not until he saw the whisker marks on each cheek did he realize just who it was. Naruto. The Hokage called out in a slightly surprised voice. "Hello, Lord Hokage," Naruto said respectfully with a smile. "Sorry I'm a bit late, I kind of got lost on the way here," he said with an embarrassing chuckle. "Well, you are here now," the third Hokage said before he looked behind Naruto at abounded Mizuki and Iruka. "Can you explain what happened with them?" he asked, completely not noticing the fact that they were bounded by trees. "Sure," Naruto replied with a smile. "Well, I was heading here, I came upon these two trying to kill each other in the woods. The unconscious one was in possession of the scroll, while the other one was getting the living hell beat out of him," he said, causing Iruka to look away in embarrassment. "Long story short, I captured both of them and took the scroll because I didn't know if one of them stole it or both of them stole it and one betrayed the other," Naruto said with a nonchalant shrug. "Oh, here," he said before handing the scroll over to the Hokage. "Mizuki was the only one who stole the scroll," the Hokage said while looking at the still unconscious Chunin. "Iruka was part of the search party that I sent out to retrieve the scroll," he added as he turned to the academy instructor, nodding to the Hokage. Naruto signaled the clone to set Iruka free. "Take the thief to Ibiki." The Hokage ordered the shinobi around before turning back to Naruto. "Let us go to my office, Naruto," he said before turning and walking towards the giant red building. While holding onto the forbidden scroll, Naruto dispelled his clones before following the Hokage to his office, leaving the shinobi behind to deal with the scroll thief. "Just who is that boy?" one of the shinobi asked as he stared at Naruto walking away. "How the hell did he bind Mizuki with a tree?" another asked, drawing attention to the fact the traitor had a tree branch wrapped around him. Guys," a random Chunin stuttered out, "is that symbol on the back of his shirt what I think it is?" he asked while pointing to Naruto's back. Everyone looked over to Naruto and saw the Senju clan's crest on his back, causing their eyes to widen. "The Senju clan," one of them whispered out in shock. It was at that moment a few of the smarter ones began looking between Naruto and the tree branch that was binding Mizuki. "Impossible," one said in a whisper. "The first Hokages would release," another said before he turned and looked at Iruka as if to ask if it was true. "Yes, you are correct," Iruka replied, getting everyone to look at him. "He possesses the bloodline of the first Hokage," he said, causing everyone's jaws to drop. Hokage's office. As they entered the office, the Hokage went to sit behind his desk, but then he remembered that the chair, which is usually on the opposite side of his desk, had been sent out to be replaced that afternoon, and a new one would not arrive until the next day. "I'm sorry, but the chair which usually there was sent out to be replaced," he said as he looked at Naruto with an apologetic look on his face. "It is fine," Naruto said with a wave of his hand before he stomped his foot on the ground, causing a few small beams of wood to sprout up. In a matter of seconds, a new chair made out of wood was there for him to sit on. "Wonderful," the Hokage said as both he and Naruto sat down. The Hokage sat down and blinked for a few seconds as he stared at Naruto, who was grinning at him. His eyes then widened to the size of dinner plates before he sprung up back to his feet and pointed at Naruto. "Why, you just," he stuttered out in a shocked voice, causing Naruto to burst out laughing. "Brahma was right, people's reaction to my bloodline is hilarious," Naruto said while laughing. The Hokage plopped himself back down on his chair before he let out a sigh. "I'm getting too old for this," he said, causing Naruto to only grin at him. "When did you unlock it?" he asked. "When I was 5, Naruto replied, surprising the old man. "It happened the same time I unlocked my chakra," he said, causing the old Hokage to nod. "It does bring back a lot of memories seeing you use it," he said with a fond smile. "It reminds me of Hashirama Sensei," he said, causing Naruto to grin after being compared to his great-great-grandfather. "Brahma said the same thing," he said with a smile. "I was expecting you 2 days ago, Naruto," the Hokage said as he stared at Naruto. "You missed the graduation exam," he added, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. "What?" Naruto yelled asked. "Does that mean I have to wait till next year?" he asked in a slight panic. "Oh man, Grandma is going to kill me," he said as he sunk into the chair. "No, nothing like that," the Hokage said with a chuckle. "I can give you the test tomorrow," he said, causing Naruto to breathe out a sigh of relief. "However, a lot of the teams have already been decided, so we are going to have to come up with something to do about you," he said, causing Naruto to nod his head. "I would love to hear about how life was for you with Tsunade, but it is pretty late now. And I am sure you must be tired," the Hokage said, causing Naruto to smile and nod his head. He was indeed tired, and he needed a bath as soon as possible. "Tell you what, why don't you come by the Saratobi compound tomorrow morning for breakfast, and you can tell me everything," he added with a grandfatherly smile. That sounds wonderful, Naruto replied with a smile before he remembered something. Before I forget, he said as he flicked his wrist and unsealed a small scroll and handed it to the Hokage. This is a letter from my grandmother, appointing me the acting head of the Senju clan until she returns to the village, he said in a serious voice. When will she be returning? The Hokage asked. She said we will arrive here a few days before the finals of the Chunin exams, Naruto replied. Well then, I should let you go get settled in, the Hokage said as he stood up. You won't by chance have a map of the village, do you? Naruto asked, not wanting to get lost again. The third Hokage pulled open one of the grass to his desk and pulled out a map. He then opened it for Naruto. We are here right now, he said pointing to the map. Senju compound is located over here in the clan district, he said, while pointing where Naruto needed to go. Naruto looked at it and began plotting his path to take. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Naruto said with a thankful smile on his face as he folded up the map. I will see you in the morning, the Hokage said, causing Naruto to nod. Good night, Lord Hokage, Naruto said before he held up a half-ram seal and shunshin away. Naruto appeared down at the entrance where he left the group of shinobi with Mizuki. There was no one there when he appeared there with a body flicker technique. The streets were completely empty. Naruto looked around at his surroundings for a bit before he opened the map and began making his way to the clan district where the Senju compound was located. It took him 5 minutes to arrive in front of the gates to Senju compound from the Hokage's office. When he arrived there, he could see that there were people still on the streets, most of them were staring at him. He chalked it up to the fact that he was staring at the gates to the compound. Naruto then walked up to the gate, getting the attention of everyone on the street. Even those who were not looking at him previously now had their eyes on him. He bit his thumb, drawing some blood before swiping it across the seal on the gate. He then pressed his palm over the seal and pulsed his chakra in a specific pattern that his grandmother taught him. Everyone on the street watched in amazement as the sealing array glowed before gates pushed themselves open. Naruto walked through the gates and into the compound, ignoring the people that were on the street, trying to get a look inside the famous Senju clan compound. After he entered, he locked the gates behind him and reactivated the seals before making his way to the main house of the compound. The clan compound was rather large, there were enough houses there for a few hundred clan members. When Naruto arrived at the main house, he created about 50 shadow clones and unsealed the storage scrolls with all of his stuff in them and give it to them to put away while he orders a few of them to go explore the house. While all the clones were doing that, Naruto made his way down a hallway that his grandmother told him about and stood in front of a wall. He then bit his finger once more, drawing some more blood, and repeated what he did at the gate. After doing that, a large ceiling array appeared on the wall and a door became visible. He opened the door, which leads to a flight of stairs going down. He walked down the stairs and came upon another door, which he did the same thing he did to the previous one, unlocking the security seal which was placed on it. Once it did that, he opened the door and stepped into what his grandmother described as the Senju clan's vault. As he stepped into the room, the lights automatically came on and Naruto could only marvel at the number of weapons, books, and scrolls that were in the room. Whoa, he said in amazement. It was inside this room that all of his great-great-grandfather's jutsus were locked away in, along with a lot of books, weapons, and scrolls that were spoils of war. As Naruto was looking around, his eye caught a rather large scroll in the corner of the room just next to the door. It was a white scroll with a black and silver lining. He walked up to it and picked it up. Wonder what this is? He asked himself before he opened the scroll and could not help but smirk when he saw what it was. The summoning contract, he said with a smile before a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Why are there no names written on it? He asked as he saw that there was not a single name written on the contract, signifying that there had never been a summoner for this contract. I wonder what kind of creature this is for. He asked himself before he caught a glimpse at a picture of the animal at the bottom corner of the contract. Interesting, he said with a smirk. It was currently morning and Naruto was getting ready to head over the Sarutobi clan compound to have breakfast with the Hokage. After the clones had finished getting all of his stuff ready, he opted to go straight to bed, saving the exploring for later today. He did not sign the summoning contract that he found last night, deciding to do it another day when he had the time. As he walked out of his bedroom, he made his way to the door leading to the basement of the main house. Even though he was going to be having breakfast with Hokage and will probably be taking his graduation exam after that, he decided to put his clones to work inside of the Senju clan's private library, where all of the clan's jutsus and scrolls were located, and more importantly where his great-grandfather's wood release techniques were located. Naruto opened the basement door and walked down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs was a hallway with 2 doors on either side. He knew the one on the right was an indoor training room, while the one on the left was the library. Turning to his left, he deactivated the security seal on the door and opened it. As soon as the door opened, the lights to the library automatically came on, leaving Naruto to marvel at the room in front of him. Whoa. Naruto exclaimed in surprise as he stared at the extremely large library before him. He had no doubt that it was his great-great-grandfather who created this room, judging from its size and the wooden beams that were supporting it. It was without a doubt one of the biggest libraries that Naruto had ever seen. By the looks of it, the room well extends beyond the house. He noted as he looked around, it was the truth, the Khan's library extended well beyond the main house. It took up a good chunk of space on the western side of the compound. No one would know that there was a library there given the fact that it was underground. But Naruto did not doubt the fact that there were probably security seals in place, just in case someone did discover that fact and tried to tunnel their way in. There have to be over 1,000 books and scrolls in here, he commented as he stared at the numerous shelves with a variety of books and scrolls. He was under the impression that there were only going to be jutsu scrolls in the library. However, now he could see that there are a lot more than that. Realizing that he was going to be late for his breakfast with the Hokage, he decided to get down to business. He made a cross seal in front of him and began channeling a large amount of chakra before shouting out. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Naruto yelled out, creating a large puff of smoke inside the library. When the smoke vanished, 2,000 copies of Naruto were scattered throughout the library. Okay, listen up. Naruto said loudly so that all the clones could hear him. I don't know how many books and scrolls are in here, so I made 2,000 clones just in case, he said as he looked around at the small army of clones he had created. Each of you is to take either a book or a scroll and begin reading, he said, causing his clones to groan. If there is no more reading material for you to read. Just dispel yourself, understood? He asked, earning a nod from each clone, and when you are done reading do not dispel yourself, instead, read it again to make sure whatever it is you read sticks, he ordered, earning him another set of groans. Have fun. He said before turning and walking out of the room, locking the door behind him. He then began making his way to the Sarutobi clan compound. As Naruto left the clan compound, he activated the security seals on the gate as he left. He knew there were probably a lot of people who were dying to get their hands on a few of the clan's secrets and techniques that were stored inside of the clan compound. With his return to the village and the compound, there would be no doubt that some people may think that they could probably sneak into the compound now, but those who are brave enough to try would be in for a rude awakening. As Naruto was walking through the clan district on his way to the Sarutobi compound, he could not help but notice that there were people staring at him as he walked by. It was still pretty early in the morning, so there were not a lot of people on the streets, but there was still a fair amount of them doing their early morning shopping and exercise. At first, he thought there was something on his face, or maybe he did not dress properly. It was not until his keen hearing picked up what people were saying as he walked by did he realizes why they were staring. Did you hear? A random woman on the street said to another. That boy is a senju, she added while motioning to Naruto. Yes, I heard, another woman replied. My husband came home last night and told me, she added. I always thought Lady Tsunade was the only senju alive, a teenage girl said to her as they watched Naruto walk by. Do you think he is her son? Her friend asked. They say he has the power of the first Hokage, a man said to a street vendor. That can't be true, can it? The vendor replied with a doubtful look on his face. He is so hot. One girl said with a slight squeal as she stared at Naruto. I know. Her friend replied with an equal squeal, just looking at him is making me want to have his babies, she said, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. After he heard that, Naruto started walking faster towards the compound while praying to God that he does not get raped before he reached there. The Sarutobi clan compound was about a 10-minute walk from the Senju compound. It would have been a much quicker journey if Naruto had chosen to run there or use the body flicker technique, but he wanted to take in the sights and sounds of the village in the morning. When he got to the compound, he asked one of the clan members to show him the way to the Hokage's house, which they happily did. Naruto knocked on the door of the Hokage's house, and a few seconds later a young woman opened the door. Hello, I'm here to see the Hokage, Naruto said with a smile. Are you Naruto? The young woman asked, to which Naruto nodded his head. Lord Senju, please come in, my father is in the living room relaxing, the Hokage's daughter said. Please, call me Naruto, Naruto said with a smile as he stepped into the house. She smiled and nodded to him before leading him to the living room where the Hokage was sitting reading a book. Father, Lord, I mean Naruto is here, he said, getting the Hokage's attention. Naruto my boy, the Hokage said as he stood up with a smile on his face. Please have a seat, he said, motioning Naruto to sit down. Naruto smiled and sat down on the couch opposite the Hokage. I am going to get breakfast served, the Hokage's daughter said as she left for the kitchen. So, how was your first night in the village? The old man asked as he sat back down. It was peaceful, Naruto replied with a nod. I had to stop myself from exploring great-great-father's techniques, he said with a chuckle, causing the third Hokage to chuckle as well before a confused look appeared on his face. Did you not have Hashirama Sensei's techniques with you before? He asked while looking at Naruto. No, Naruto replied with a shake of his head, no one really expected that I would awaken that bloodline, so grandma did not take them with her when she left, they were locked away in the clan compound, he said, causing the Hokage to nod his head, understanding his student's line of thought. I mostly learned how to control it by myself with a lot of trial and error, he added. I see, the Hokage said, it would also seem as though the word of your arrival has spread throughout the village, he said, causing Naruto to smile slightly. That would explain why everyone was staring at me on the way over here, Naruto replied, causing the old man to chuckle. Also, it seems as though some people have also received word of you possessing the first Hokage's wood release, the Hokage added. That's no problem, Naruto said, surprising the old man, I was not planning on keeping it a secret either way, he added with a smile. Wouldn't it put you in more danger? Asked the age-old Hokage. Grandma wouldn't have sent me here by myself if I wasn't strong enough to handle any of the danger that may come my way, he replied with a confident look on his face. The third Hokage was about to say something to Naruto, but before he could his daughter came back to the living room and told them that breakfast was ready. The two of them went to the dining room where they were joined by a young boy wearing an extremely long scarf. This is my grandson, Konohamaru, the third Hokage said as he sat down at the head of the table. He is an academy student, he added. Naruto looked over at the kid to see him looking back at him, as though he was trying to size him up. Naruto could not help but chuckle along with the Hokage. Nice to meet you, Konohamaru, Naruto said, causing the kid's eyes to widen in shock, confusing Naruto. Naruto, he added. Everyone then began eating, while Naruto started to tell the third Hokage and Konohamaru about his life in the capital and his training. Konohamaru was absolutely amazed by Naruto. Not only did Naruto not call him honorable grandson, but he was also super strong and was related to two of the previous Hokages. The third Hokage was also impressed with Naruto's recount of his training with Tsunade and Jiraiya. He was also surprised to hear that Naruto knew about his parents, even though he did not say it. The third was fairly sure that the boy knew about the Nine Tails as well. About an hour had passed since they all sat down, and Naruto had been expecting to get some memories back from some of the clones in the library who did not get any reading materials. There couldn't be more than 2,000 books and scrolls in there, right? He asked himself before the third Hokage broke him out of his thought. Naruto, I've arranged for you to take the graduation test at the academy, he said, getting Naruto's attention. I'll be accompanying you, he added, causing Naruto to smile and turn to Konohamaru. Would you like to come too, Konohamaru? Naruto asked as he turned to the kid, causing him to light up. Can I? He asked, causing both Naruto and the third to chuckle and nod. The trio finished up breakfast and began making their way over to the Shinobi Academy. The academy was located next to the Hokage's office, so it would be about a 15-minute walk from the Sarutobi clan compound. Konohamaru was walking in between the Hokage and Naruto with an excited look on his face. He was going to get a chance to see what the academy graduation exam was like before he graduated. He was giddy with anticipation over the fact that he was going to get an advantage over everyone else. Seeing the look on the little boy's face, Naruto could tell exactly what he was thinking about. He could not help but shake his head at the kid's thinking. As they were walking by, people would stop and greet the Hokage and Naruto. Much to his surprise, it would seem as though the word of his return had truly spread throughout the village. When they reached the academy, Naruto had expected to see some academy students around, but there were none in sight. Where are all of the students? He asked, getting the Hokage's attention. The graduation exam was held 2 days ago, he explained as they walked through the entrance of the school. Usually, we give everyone a week off after the exams, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head, understanding. Only the instructor who will be giving you the test is here today, he added as they entered the building. The Hokage then led Naruto to one of the classrooms with Konohamaru following closely behind. As they entered the room, Naruto saw the Chunin that he had captured last night along with Mizuki. Good morning, Lord Hokage, the instructor said with a bow towards the Hokage before turning to Naruto. Lord Senju, he said with another bow before moving to Konohamaru. Konohamaru? He asked in surprise, seeing the kid there. Hey, Iruka-sensei. Konohamaru said with a wave. I'm here to watch big bro Naruto take his exam, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at his choice of name. Speak of which, let's get started, the Hokage said, causing Iruka to nod and motioned Naruto to sit at one of the desks. First we will do the written portion of the exam, he said as he placed a sheet of paper and pencil in front of the blonde. You have 1 hour to complete it, he said before motioning Naruto to start. When Naruto started the test, he could not believe how easy it was, thanks to all of the books that his grandmother made him read. He breezed through the exam as though it was nothing. There were only 10 questions on the exam, spending only 1 minute on each question. Naruto finished the exam in 10 minutes and spent an extra 5 minutes looking over his work. Done, Naruto said, surprising everyone. That was fast, Iruka commented while the Hokage nodded in agreement. You still have 45 minutes left, don't you want to look over your test? Iruka asked, to which Naruto shook his head before speaking. I already did, he said as he held up his test for Iruka to take. It was super easy, he said with a grin. The Hokage did not know how to feel about all this. Should he be proud that he now has a shinobi this smart or embarrassed at the fact that his shinobi academy test was so easy? He was going to have to bring this up at the next council meeting. Okay, let us move on to the ninjutsu portion of the test before we head outside, Iruka said, causing Naruto to nod his head before replacing himself with Konohamaru, who looked confused as to how he got to the front of the classroom. Huh? Konohamaru asked as he looked around and saw Naruto standing where he was giving him the thumbs up. Very good, Iruka said as he wrote down some marks on his clipboard as Naruto moved to stand in front of him again. Now please perform the transformation technique, Iruka said, earning a nod from Naruto before he transformed into a perfect copy of Konohamaru. It's me. Konohamaru said with a grin. At first, he was bored when he had to sit there and watch Naruto take the written exam, but now, he was having fun. Very good, Iruka commented as he wrote some more things down on his clipboard, and finally, please perform the clone technique, he said before he watched Naruto snap his fingers, causing a puffy of smoke to appear beside him, as a perfect copy of Naruto, stood there staring at Iruka. Wonderful, Iruka commented while making a note that the clone appeared to be solid. Now then. Let us go outside for the taijutsu portion of the exam, he said as he began walking out the classroom with Naruto, Konohamaru, and the third Hokage following closely behind. The group arrived at the back of the academy, which was usually used to hold taijutsu spars and physical training exercises. Iruka then placed the clipboard down and walked over and stood inside of an oval drawn into the ground with white paint. No ninjutsu is allowed. The winner is decided when either opponent surrenders or is unable to continue the match, Iruka explained as he motioned Naruto to stand inside the oval. Lord Hokage will be the judge, he added, causing the Hokage to nod his head. The Hokage then looked at them to see if they are ready before he gave the go-ahead to begin. Begin. He spoke, as he said that Naruto disappeared in a great show of speed and appeared in front of Iruka, causing his eyes to widen in shock. He then buried his fist into the Chunin's stomach, knocking the air out of him. As the fist impacted his gut, Iruka dropped to all fours and began gasping for air. Winner Naruto. The third Hokage yelled out as he called the batch to an end. He had expected Iruka to put up some sort of fight, but even he did not expect Naruto to have that sort of speed. Konohamaru did not know what just happened. 1 minute Naruto was standing at the edge of the oval, then he just disappeared and appeared in front of Iruka, punching him in the gut. The fight was over in the blink of an eye. Wow, big bro Naruto. That was so cool. Konohamaru exclaimed as he ran up to Naruto, you have to teach me how to do that, he said, causing Naruto to chuckle and ruffle his hair. Konohamaru reminded Naruto of himself as a kid, energetic and always want to learn some super cool technique. Sure, kid, Naruto said, causing the kid to become even more excited. I'll teach you one day when I'm free, he added before turning to the Hokage and Iruka, who managed to pick himself up off the floor. So, did I pass? He asked. Even though I have not graded your written exam as yet, Iruka said while still trying to catch his breath, your scores on the other two portions are enough for you to pass, he said while taking deep breaths. Congratulations, Naruto. The Hokage said as he pulled out a forehead protector with black cloth from his robe, you are now a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village, he said proudly as he handed the forehead protector to Naruto. Naruto held it in his hand, admiring it for a few moments while smiling to himself before he tied it around his left bicep. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Naruto said as he adjusted the forehead protector on his arm. You are to report to the academy in 4 days to receive your team placement, the Hokage ordered out, causing Naruto to nod his head. Now if you excuse me, I'm sure I have a pile of paperwork in my office waiting for me, he said before he turned to Iruka and spoke. Iruka, see in my office when you are done here, he said, earning a nod from the Chunin before he used the body flicker technique to disappear. With the Hokage gone, Naruto turned to Iruka and spoke. If there is nothing more, I will see you in 4 days, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, causing Iruka to nod his head back at him. Naruto and Konohamaru then began making their way out of the academy. What are you going to do now, big bro? Konohamaru asked while looking up at Naruto. Well, I'm going to head back to the clan compound and explore the place. What about you? He asked as he looked down at the boy. I'm going to go look for my friends to train with, the little boy said, causing Naruto to smile at him. Well, I guess I'll see you around, squirt, Naruto said before using the body flicker technique to appear back in front of the compound gates. Naruto entered the compound and resealed the gates before making his back into the main house and straight to the vault for the summoning contract he found the previous night. He did not bother to go check on his clones in the library due to the fact that it had only been a few hours since he left them. He was a fast reader, however he was not that fast. When Naruto got to the vault, he grabbed a summoning contract and made his way to the Senju clan's private training ground. It was located a little distance away from the main house. While walking to the training ground, Naruto could not help but marvel at the beauty of the Senju compound. There were cherry blossom trees scattered throughout the compound, a small waterway that cuts through some areas in the compound, with some rather large koi fishes swimming in it, and some very beautifully designed small wooden bridges going across. The compound was absolutely gorgeous. When he arrived at the training ground, he walked straight to the middle and opened the scroll. He bit his thumb before writing his name and blood in one of the slots, before putting his fingerprints at the bottom. Once done, he stood up with an excited look on his face. He flashed through the necessary hand seals and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning jutsu. He yelled out as he pumped a lot of chakra into the technique trying to summon the boss. As his hand contacted the ground, a large ceiling array appeared before a giant cloud of smoke filled the training ground, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he took a step back. The cloud of smoke was far bigger than he had expected. He had seen both his grandmother and godfather summon their respected summons, but neither of their summon was this big. "Who has summoned me?" Came a deep voice growling out from inside the smoke. As the smoke began to clear, Naruto could see standing there in front of him was a giant black wolf. The wolf was far bigger than his grandmother's slug summons Kitsayu. It was almost double the size of Kitsayu if Naruto was being honest. "I summoned you?" Naruto said loudly so the wolf could hear. Hearing someone answering his question, the giant wolf looked down in front of him and saw a human boy standing there looking up at him. There was no fear in the boy's eyes, only excitement. "Do you expect me to believe that a puny little human like you could summon me, the great Fenrir?" The wolf, now named Fenrir, asked. He did not believe that a child could have the power to summon him of all his kin. Naruto narrowed his eyes and released all of his chakra, causing the ground beneath his feet to crack and the pressure in the air to thicken as a green outline of chakra surrounded his body. Fenrir was taken by surprise at the amount of chakra that the boy was releasing. He had to admit, for a child his age, the amount of chakra he was releasing was quite impressive. It was not enough to worry Fenrir, but it was impressive, nonetheless. "Do you still doubt me?" Naruto asked while continuing to release his chakra. "It would appear as though you do have the power to summon me," the giant wolf said, causing Naruto to calm his chakra down. "Now I take it you wish to be the new summoner to the wolf clan?" he asked, causing Naruto to nod his head before he spoke. "Yes, I do," he said as he stared up at the giant wolf. Fenrir then brought his head down to Naruto's level before he spoke. "Before you can be a summoner to our clan you must first be judged," he said, confusing Naruto. "Just look into my eyes," he said as his blue eyes glowed as they met Naruto's eyes. Naruto did not know what the wolf was doing, but went along with it anyway. When Fenrir's eyes stopped glowing, he stood back up to full length and stared at Naruto for a while. "The child of prophecy," he said as he stared at Naruto. When he stared into Naruto's eyes, he was looking at the boy's soul, judging his character. It was while looking at his soul that he saw that this boy was the boy the high elder in his clan prophesied about many years ago. "Looks like we finally have a summoner," he thought to him. "I have one question for you, boy," he said to Naruto. "What is the thing that is most important to you?" He asked mainly because he did not want to appear as though he would accept him as his summoner so easily. "My family," Naruto said without hesitation. "And if someone were to try and harm your family?" Fenrir asked, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow as they turned blood red with slits and his chakra to explode out, as well as a large amount of killing intent. "I will show them no mercy," Naruto replied in a cold, deadly tone, causing a small smile to appear on the wolf's face. "Congratulations, Naruto Senju," Fenrir said while looking down at Naruto. "You are free to summon me or any of my kind anytime you need our assistance," he said as Naruto's eyes returned to normal and his chakra and killing intent dissipated. "Welcome to the pack, kid," he added. "Thank you, Fenrir," Naruto said, flashing the wolf a grind. "See you around, kid," Fenrir said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Naruto smiled and picked up the summoning contract before sealing it into the storage seal on his wrist before using the body flicker technique to appear back inside the main house. Seeing as how the day was still young, he decided to go to the library and find one of his great-great-grandfather's techniques train in. As he entered the library, he saw all 2,000 of his clones scattered throughout the library reading books and scrolls. "Listen up," he called out, getting all of their attention. "Everyone sit down," he ordered, confusing his clones. Even though they were confused, they all took a seat on the floor and waited for further instructions. "If you are reading a scroll with wood jutsus in it, stand up," he ordered, causing about 50 clones to stand up. "Bring those scrolls. I want a wood jutsu to practice while all of you are reading in here," he said as he began examining the scrolls the clones were bringing him. Wood clone," he said as he examined the scroll. "I'll take this one. Dispel yourself," he said, causing the clone to nod its head before dispelling. When the clone dispelled, all the information it had on the wood clone jutsu so far rushed through Naruto's head. Naruto then continued to examine the rest of the scrolls, knowing every well the wood clone would be too simple for him. "I think you will like this," one of the clones said, handing him a scroll, causing his eyebrow to raise. Wood Dragon Jutsu, Naruto said with a smirk as he read the name, creates a gigantic wooden dragon which can be used to restrain a target. Naruto read out the description of the jutsu, can also absorb the target's chakra. Interesting, he said with an excited smirk, the clone was right, he would like this one. The user can detonate the dragon at any time they wish, creating a large explosion, he said as his smirk turned into a full-out grin. Oh, this is going to be fun, he said with a chuckle. 4 days had passed since Naruto took the graduation exam, and today was the day. He is supposed to go to the academy for his team placement. In the past 3 days, Naruto had been up to quite a lot. He had not left the compound at all for the past 3 days, opting to stay inside and train his wood release. His clones had finished reading the majority of the books in the library by the day after his exams. There were still a few books and scrolls left to read, but Naruto figured he would take care of that at a later date. It had only taken him a few minutes to figure out the wood clone technique and an hour to master it, the level he had with the shadow clone jutsu. The rest of the 3 days were spent learning the wood dragon jutsu. Naruto had to admit that it was a bit complex and took a bit of time to figure out, but thanks to his shadow clone, he was able to grasp the concept and able to perform the jutsu after 2 days of trying. It did require a fair amount of chakra to produce a large wooden dragon, but that was something he had in spades. He had not mastered the jutsu by any means, but he could perform it well enough to defend himself. The thing that really fascinated him with the jutsu was its ability to blow itself up whenever given the command. Naruto was wondering if he could do that with other wood jutsus. If so, then his enemies are in for a world of hurt. Naruto was currently standing in his room looking at himself in front of the mirror. He had just finished getting dressed and was ready to head to the academy. He adjusted the forehead protector strapped to his left arm before smiling and making his way out of his room and out of his house. Naruto exited the compound and resealed it before making his way to the academy. As he was walking there, he noticed the streets were a lot busier than he had ever seen. Since his return, he had yet to fully explore the village. Most of what he saw of the village was when he was walking with the Hokage in Konohamaru when he took his exam. Now he was seeing the streets of the village in full swing. Shops were opened, vendors had placed out their stalls, and people were busy moving from store to store carrying out their shopping. Naruto simply placed his hands in his pocket and weaved his way through the crowded street while at the same time observing everything. As he was walking through the crowded street, some of the people started to take notice of his presence while others did not notice. Those who did notice, however, would stop and talk among themselves about him and about rumors they heard about him, most of which all dealt with suspicions as to whom his parents are, whether or not he was actually a senju, and if the rumors about him possessing the first Hokage's wood release were true. Naruto for his part simply ignored all the whispering and stares and simply carried on his way to the academy. At the academy, currently standing in front of a class of newly graduated genin, was the Chunin instructor in charge of the academy, Iruka Yamino. He was standing there with a proud smile on his face as he stared at all of his soon-to-be former students, all wearing their regulation headbands signifying themselves as shinobis of the Hidden Leaf Village. This year's batch of graduates had quite a lot of potential considering the fact that a lot of those who are sitting in front of him were heirs to a lot of the prominent clans in the village, with a few civilian children who have shown some promise. The clan heirs were expected to hold a lot of promise for the future because of the fact that they are the future leaders of their respected clans. As Iruka scanned the class of graduates, he could not help frowning slightly when he noticed that there was one particular heir missing. Where is Naruto Senju? Iruka thought to himself with a slight frown. He was there when Hokage told Naruto that he had to be at the academy in 4 days for his team placement, so he could help but wonder why the boy was not here in class with the rest of the graduates. Did he forget? He asked himself. He knew all of the Jonin Sensei were currently observing the class, thanks to the third Hokage's special jutsu that he uses with his crystal ball to view the village from. It would not be a good look to the Jonin Senseis if Naruto does not show up here today. It may appear as though he is not taking things seriously because of the fact that he is a senju. Iruka sighed and shook his head slightly as he got ready to speak to the graduating class. Just as he was about to begin speaking, however, a knock came at the door, drawing the attention of everyone in the classroom. "Enter," Iruka said loudly so that whoever was behind the door could hear. The door slid open, revealing Naruto standing there with a stoic look on his face. "Hello Iruka-sensei, I'm not late, am I?" Naruto asked as he walked through the door and walked up to Iruka. "You are," Iruka replied as he folded his arms and stared at Naruto, causing him to grin sheepishly. "Sorry," Naruto apologized with a slight bow. "The Hokage told me to come here in 4 days, however, he never mentioned what time I should be here," Naruto explained, causing Iruka to nod his head accepting his excuse. Iruka then turned to the class and spoke loudly. "Class, this is Naruto Senju," he said loudly as he introduced Naruto to the rest of the class. "He will be joining us today for the team placement," he said, causing the children in the room's eyes to widen in shock at who was standing in front of them. "The Senju?" one student whispered. So, the rumors are true, the Senju clan has returned, another said in a whisper. That's so hot. One girl shouted. Do you think he has a girlfriend? Another girl asked. Naruto could only sigh when he heard what the girls were discussing. Iruka-sensei. Shouted a boy from the back of the class with a small puppy in his head. Naruto immediately recognized him as a member of the Inuzuka clan because of the fang marks on his cheeks and the ninja hound on his head. How come he is here for team placement when he didn't even take the graduation exam or attended a single class in the academy? The Inuzuka boy asked in a slightly hostile tone, confusing Naruto. Well, Kiba, Naruto did take the graduation exam and scored a perfect score on all portions of the exam, Iruka said, not surprising Naruto. Even though Iruka had yet to grade his written test, he knew he got all the answers right. If Naruto had attended the academy like you all, I am sure he would have been the rookie of the year. Iruka added, surprising everyone and causing a certain black-haired Uchiha to narrow his eyes at Naruto. As to why Naruto did not attend a single class in the academy, Iruka began before turning to Naruto. That is not for me to say. If Naruto wishes to share that information, he will tell it you all, the Chunin said, not wanting to overstep his bounds when it comes to Naruto's personal information. Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders before he spoke in a nonchalant tone. It's no big deal really, Naruto said as he stared up at the class. I just lived outside of the village with my grandmother, she trained and taught me everything I know, he said with a shrug of his shoulders. And just who exactly is your grandmother? Kiba asked in a tone that was really starting to get on Naruto's nerve as he folded his arms. Tsunade Senju, Naruto replied as he narrowed his eyes at the boy before flurrying his chakra, causing all of the newly minted genins in the room to sweat and tremble with fear at the amount of power being released. Do you have anything you want to say about my grandmother, boy? Naruto asked in a dangerous tone. Kiba immediately shook his head no. Naruto then claimed his chakra down before turning to Iruka and giving a slight bow before he spoke again. I apologize, Iruka-sensei, he said, apologizing for the commotion he was causing. It is no problem, please take a seat so we can begin, Iruka said with a smile. Naruto nodded and walked up the stairs to the only available seat in the class. It was in the third row with only two people sitting on it. One was a boy with his hair tied in a spiky ponytail and an expression on his face as though he had just woken up. The other was a girl with blue eyes and long platinum blonde hair worn in a ponytail, with bangs framing the right side of her face. She was wearing a purple outfit consisting of a high-collared blouse and a matching apron skirt with bandages on her abdomen and legs, small hoop earrings, and her forehead protector worn as a belt around her waist. As Naruto walked up the stairs to the open seat, his eyes met the blonde-haired girl's. A small blush crept up onto her face, but Naruto simply ignored it and kept a stoic look on his. When he reached the open seat, he smiled slightly at the girl and spoke. Do you mind if I sit here? He asked politely, to which the girl only stared at him and shook her head, slowly causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her as he sat down. Troublesome, the boy sitting on the other side of the girl said as he stared at the two of them with a bored expression on his face. As Naruto sat down, he could feel a lot of people's gaze on him, a few of which were hostile. Most of them were coming from the males in the classroom out of jealousy, but there was one in particular that had trace amounts of killing intent. Adverting his gaze to the row in front of him, Naruto could see a black-haired boy in a blue shirt staring at him with a murderous look on his face. Naruto, for his part, had no idea who the boy was. It was not until he saw the symbol on the back of his shirt did he realize who it was. So, this is the last Uchiha, Naruto thought as he stared at the boy. I expected better, he added before turning away, ignoring the boy's presence, only causing the Uchiha boy to become angrier. Okay class, listen up. He said, getting everyone's attention. As of today, you are all ninjas. To get here you face difficult trials and hardships, but that is nothing. What comes next will be far more difficult, Iruka said as he held both of his hands behind his back and spoke with a warm smile on his face. Now you are only genins, first level ninjas. All the genin will be grouped into 3-man squads and a join. An elite ninja will lead each squad, he said, surprising a lot of people, causing Naruto to wonder what exactly was taught at the Shinobi Academy. We want each squad to be a balance of strength and ability, so that is how we set them up, he said as he held up a piece of paper. I will now announce the squads, he said before he began reading out team names and the members of each team. I wonder which squad I will place in. Naruto wondered to himself. He was well ahead of any of these genins. Placing him on a squad will not only cause an imbalance, but it will also slow his own growth, not to mention hinder the growth of his teammates. Squad 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and he called out before he was interpreted by the pink-haired girl in front of Naruto, yelling. Ja. Take that Ino, true love conquers all. Sakura yelled out while turning to look at the girl sitting beside Naruto. And Sai, your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Haddock, Iruka said, causing Sakura to turn and look at the pale-faced boy sitting in front of her with a creeped-out look on her face. Next, Squad 8. Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburam. Jonin Sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi, Iruka said, causing a girl with pale eyes and a boy in sunglasses to nod their head, along with the Inyazuka clan boy from earlier. Squad 9 is still in rotation, so Squad 10. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akimichi, your Jonin Sensei will be Asuma Tsurutobi, Iruka said, causing the girl sitting beside Naruto to groan. Ugh. How come I get stuck with the two worst students in the class? Ino groaned out as he placed her head down on the desk. Naruto could not help but chuckle at the girl's reaction. It can't be helped, they are likely trying to create a new Ino Shikacho formation, Naruto said with a smile as he looked over the girl, causing her to feel a bit better. Troublesome, Shikamaru said as he laid down on his desk. And finally, Squad 11, Iruka said, getting Naruto's attention once more, consisting only of Naruto Senju with your Jonin Sensei being Yamato, he said, confusing everyone in the room. Iruka Sensei. How come he gets to be on a squad by himself? Sakura stood up and asked the question on everyone's minds. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Sakura, Iruka said with a sigh as he knew this was going to happen, we built each team with a balance of strength and ability. Placing Naruto on a team with any of you will cause an imbalance due to Naruto's training, putting him ahead of all of you in terms of both strength and ability, he said, surprising a lot of people while angering some. Another reason why he is on a team by himself is that placing him on one of your squads will not only hinder his growth but the growth of his supposed teammates as well, Iruka explained, causing Naruto to nod in agreement. Lord Hokage personally put all of these teams together. If you have a problem with it, then you are free to lodge a complaint with him. He added with a smirk as he watched everyone look down slightly, not wanting to challenge the decision of the Hokage. Good, with that settled, after lunch, you will meet your new Jonin senseis. Until then, class dismissed, he said as he rolled the pepper with the team placements on it. Just as everyone was about to get up from their dead, a puff of smoke appeared in the front of the classroom, not too far from Iruka, surprising everyone including Iruka. When the smoke cleared, a Jonin was standing there with a serious look on his face. The Jonin had short brown hair and black almond-shaped eyes. He was wearing a standard Jonin uniform, with the only difference being the navy blue shirt under his flask jacket goes up all the way to his chin. In addition to that, he had a Hapuri-style forehead protector that framed his face, similar to that of the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. The Jonin scanned the room as if he were looking for someone. When his eyes landed on Naruto, he stopped and spoke. Naruto Senju, I am your Jonin sensei, Yamato, he said while looking at Naruto. Meet me at training 11, you have 15 minutes, the man said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Everyone in the room then turned to Naruto, who simply shrugged his shoulders before standing up. He then held up a half-ram seal and disappeared from the room in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves. That's so cool, one girl said as they all watched the pink cherry blossom leaves fall to the ground. Yeah, he might even be cooler than Sasuke, another said, causing the Sasuke fangirls all to glare at her. Training ground 11. Yamato was standing in the center of the training ground waiting for his student to arrive. He was surprised when the Hokage had pulled from his duties in the Anbu to take on a genin squad. At first, he was not pleased with the idea of dealing with a bunch of genins. It was not until he was told that he was going to be getting the Senju boy to help him train his wood release that he felt somewhat relieved. He was even more surprised when the Hokage told him that the boy the Jinchuriki to the Nine-Tails Fox. It was the other reason why he was chosen to be the boy's Jonin sensei. Yamato was knocked out of his reflection when Naruto arrived at the training ground in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves. Yamato raised an eyebrow at the new form of the body flicker technique which he has never seen before. That was fast, Yamato commented as he had only been waiting there for 5 minutes. I didn't want to keep you waiting too long, Naruto said as he walked up to his new sensei. Well then, let us begin by telling each other a bit about ourselves, Yamato said as he folded his arms. You know, your name, likes and dislikes, hobbies, and goals for the future, he added, causing Naruto to nod his head understanding. My name is Naruto Senju, I like ramen, gardening, and my family. I hate anyone who tries to harm my family and those closest to me. My hobbies are training, gardening, and pulling pranks, he said with a grin on his face. As for my future goals, I want to be the strongest shinobi surpassing both my father and great-great-grandfather, he said with determination written all over his face. Yamato nodded his head as he heard what Naruto said. I guess it's my turn, he said as he prepared to introduce himself. My name is Yamato, I like walnuts and the village, I hate oily foods, my hobbies are reading books about architecture, and I don't really have any outlandish goals for the future, he said with a shrug. I guess my only goal is to have a serious spar against Kakashi-senpai. He added, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at his future goals, but he did not say anything. It was not his place to question another person's goals. So, what are we going today, sensei? Naruto asked with an excited look on his face. This usually the part where the Jonin senseis give a test to see whether or not the genin team actually have what it takes to be a genin, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head, already knowing that the test is usually centered around teamwork, but seeing as how it is just the two of us, a test of teamwork would be pointless. He said seriously while Naruto simply stood there nodding his head in agreement. So, am I getting a test? Naruto asked with a curious expression on his face. You are getting a test, Yamato said while looking at his student. We will just be testing for something else, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at him. We are going to be testing whether or not you have the strength and the ability to be on a squad by yourself, he said, causing Naruto to grin in excitement. So, we are going to have a little spar and see if you are actually as good as people say you are, he said with a smirk. Yamato was just as excited as Naruto. He only did a better job of hiding it. This would be the first time he would be going up against someone else who passed the wood release bloodline. That was not just it, however. He wanted to see the difference between someone who is naturally born with wood release, like Naruto, against his own which was artificially gifted. Let's do this, Naruto said as he flicked his wrist, activating the storage seal on his wrist, causing a long black metal staff, but 6 feet long, to appear in his hand. It was a special staff that Shizune had bought for him when he was 6. It was made entirely of chakra metal, which allows his chakra to flow through it, much better than ordinary metal would. Yamato saw that his student was rearing to go and nodded his head. The two of them then stood opposite each other in the center of the training ground. The excited look was gone from both of their faces, with a more serious one replacing it. You are to come at me with the intention of killing me, Yamato said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. In Yamato's mind, Naruto was still a genin. He may be more powerful than your average genin, but a genin was genin, regardless of who trained them, and he was a Jonin former Anbu captain. Be careful, wish for, Sensei, Naruto said coldly. He was going to take the spar very seriously, and he was not planning on holding back. He took the black staff and stabbed it into the ground, confusing his sensei. He then made a single hand seal while holding onto the staff before he pulled out of the ground. As he pulled the staff out of the ground, a large rectangular block of the earth attached itself to the end of the staff, turning it into a rather large sledgehammer. Naruto then swung the hammer up and rested it on his shoulders before speaking to his sensei. Shall we begin, sensei? He asked. Yes, the sensei said before bending down and picked up a small pebble from the ground. He tossed it up in the air, and both of their eyes became glued to the pebble as it began falling down to the ground. As soon as the pebble contacted the ground, Naruto disappeared in a great show of speed, causing his sensei's eyes to widen in shock. As fast, Yamato said as he looked around for his student. His senses alerted him of a presence above him, causing the Jonin to look up. When he looked up, he saw Naruto falling towards him with his giant hammer reared back, ready to turn the Jonin, destroy the Jonin. Earth style. Seismic smash. Naruto yelled while falling. Yamato narrowed his eyes and kicked off the ground, dodging the incoming hit. What happened next, causing the Jonin's eyes to widen in horror, as Naruto's hammer impacted the ground. It utterly destroyed the section training ground, where Yamato was standing along with the block of the earth which was attached to the staff. Yamato could only stare in shock and horror at the giant crater, with Naruto standing in the center staring at him. I guess Lady Tsunade really did train him, Yamato thought to himself as he stared at the boy. Well, the Naruto, let us see how you deal with this, the Jonin thought before he flashed through a few hand signs with a smirk on his face. Wood style. Great forest technique. He yelled out as he pointed his right arm at Naruto. Naruto's eyes were the size of dinner plates when he heard the name of the technique that his sensei called out. Before he could even think about what was happening, his sensei's right arm transformed into multiple trees, all of which were rushing towards Naruto, acting quickly. Naruto narrowed his eyes and jumped backward, dodging the trees that were making their way towards him. Much to his dismay, the trees followed his every move, causing him to flip back a few times, channeling some wind chakra into his metal staff. Naruto stopped moving backward and turned to face the incoming wave of tree branches, utilizing the wind chakra rushing through his staff. Naruto began slicing his way through the multiple tree branches with ease, a bit more ease than he expected. His trees are not as strong as my own, Naruto thought while slicing the numerous branches. While cutting the branches with his staff, 5 clones of Naruto made of wood emerged out of his back and began flashing through hand signs. Earth style. Earth Dragon Bullet. The 5 clones shouted out simultaneously, causing 5 dragons made of the earth to rise up from the ground and rush towards the Jonin. Seeing the 5 earth dragons rushing towards him, Yamato was forced to break off his wood jutsu and deal with the dragons. His right arm broke off from the numerous trees that sprouted from it before he flashed through multiple hand signs. Wood style. Wood locking wall. He yelled before slamming both his hands down on the ground in front of him. Wooden pillars then began to burst up from the ground on either side of Yamato. The pillars then joined together in a dome shape with Yamato in the center. The 5 dragons all crashed into the dome at the same time, creating a huge shockwave. Much to Naruto's surprising, the dome held up to the impact, deciding not to give the Jonin time to catch his breath. Naruto rushed forward at the dome along with his wood clones. One of the clones charged ahead of the rest and leaped into the air, rearing his fist back in the process, building up a large amount of chakra into its fist. The clone brought it down onto the dome, releasing the built-up chakra on contact with the dome, utterly destroying the wooden structure, along with a good chunk of the ground as well. When the dome collapsed, Naruto and his clones could see that their Jonin sensei was no longer there. Instead, there was a hole in the ground. Naruto's senses alerted him to danger from below, causing the blonde Jinchuriki to leap into the air. Just as his feet left the ground, 6 wooden spikes burst out from the ground, piercing through the chest of the 5 clones, while Naruto avoided the other. That was close, Naruto thought as he landed on the ground. As his feet touched the ground, 4 wooden pillars burst out from the ground around him, causing his eyes to widen slightly as he watched the 4 wooden pillars lock themselves up until it created a cage trapping Naruto inside. Wood style. 4-pillar prison technique. Yamato said calmly as he walked up to the wooden cage holding Naruto. I guess you are not as good as they say you are, Yamato said, sounding slightly disappointed, mainly due to the fact that Naruto had yet to use a single wood jutsu other than the wood clone. "Oh sensei," Naruto said in a calm voice, putting his sensei on edge. "This is cute," he said as he walked over and touched one of the wooden pillars. "But allow me to show you the difference in our wood release," he said as he narrowed his eyes and flared his chakra. As his chakra came in contact with Yamato's wood, it began sprouting branches with leaves. Naruto then formed the snake hand seal and stared at Yamato. 2 seconds later, tree branches and wooden pillars burst out from the wooden cage and rushed towards the Jonin. "He took control of my wood jutsu," Yamato screamed in his mind as he began backflipping away from the assault of trees and wooden pillars. He then heard the sound of something breaking apart, causing him to look at the cage while he was dodging the assault. When he looked over, he saw the wooden cage had broken itself apart, allowing Naruto to calmly walk out of it. Naruto then flashed through numerous hand signs before ending with a snake hand seal. Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu. Naruto yelled out as he pumped a lot of chakra into the jutsu. As he did this, the branches and pillars that were chasing after Yamato stopped and the ground began to tremble, causing Yamato to look around for the oncoming attack. From the left of Naruto, a giant serpentine dragon made of wood burst out from the ground and began encircling the area around Yamato. Yamato stared in shock at the sheer size of the dragon that was circling him. The dragon's body created a circle about 25 feet wide with the Jonin sensei in the center. Yamato, for his part, was confused about what was happening. The dragon was just circling him, it made no attempts to attack him. "Yamato sensei, I really hope you survive this because we need to have a long talk about that wood release of yours," Naruto called out, confusing his Jonin sensei further. "Now explode," Naruto yelled, causing his sensei to quickly flash through some hand signs. The eyes of the dragon glowed white for 1 second before the entire dragon exploded, destroying everything inside that 25 feet circle and creating a shock wave that leveled all the trees and wooden pillars Naruto and Yamato had created. The explosion shook the entire training ground and probably sent a small tremor through the village. Naruto had been standing some distance away, so he did not feel the brunt of the shock wave, only a bit of strong wind. Deciding to check if his sensei was still alive, he began making his way over. The explosion had kicked up quite a bit of dust, creating a large dust cloud over the area. While walking, Naruto channeled some wind chakra into his staff and swiped the air in front of him, blowing away some of the dust, revealing the damage he had done. In front of Naruto was a 25 feet wide crater with a half-broken wooden dome in the center. It would appear as though his sensei had managed to create a dome to shield himself from the brunt of the blast, however. It would also appear as though the blast broke apart a small part of the dome. "You alive, sensei?" Naruto asked, hoping the man was still alive. "Yeah, I'm here," came the voice of his sensei from inside the dome, sounding pretty tired. Jumping into the crater, Naruto made his way to the dome, using his chakra like what he did with the wooden prison. Naruto took control of the wood around the dome, causing them to open up, revealing his sensei hunched over on the ground, breathing heavily with a few burns and bruises on his body. Silently creating a shadow clone, Naruto gave it the order to heal his sensei, who seems to be suffering from chakra exhaustion. "That was some attack," Yamato said between breaths. The attack would have killed him if he had not pumped the majority of the chakra he had left into the wooden dome to strengthen it, but even then, part of it still broke apart. "Yes, with you being in the center of the circle the dragon created, the explosion came from the outside rushing in towards the center," Naruto explained as he sealed away his staff. "The shockwave impacted you from all directions at the same time, doubling the force you would normally feel from an explosion of that size," he added as he stared at the man being held by his clone. "I guess you pass," Yamato said as he started to feel a bit better. Naruto grinned happily as he stared at his sensei. "We start our first mission tomorrow bright and early. Be here at training ground 11 by 7 a.m, Yamato ordered, causing Naruto to salute him. "Yes, sensei." Naruto replied with a salute. Now, about this wood release of yours, Naruto said as he looked at his sensei with curiosity written all over his face. It had been a day since Naruto had passed his sensei's little test. Today was the first day of accepting missions together, and Naruto was absolutely excited. He could not contain the wide smile on his face. He was currently walking towards the mission assignment center, which was located within the academy, to meet up with his sensei, and he had a large grin on his face due to the excitement. As he was walking through the village, the villagers were staring at him, wondering what had him so happy. When Naruto arrived at the mission assignment section of the academy, he saw his sensei standing in front of the door waiting for him. Seeing his student walking towards the mission assignment room with a happy look on his face, Yamato could not help but ask what made him so happy. "What are you so excited about?" he asked Naruto. "Today is the first day we are doing missions." His student replied in an overly excited voice, "I can't wait to see what kind of cool mission the Hokage gives us." He added, causing Yamato to smirk, knowing exactly what was about to happen. "Alright, let's go see what cool missions Lord Hokage has for us," Yamato said with a smirk. Naruto nodded his head excitedly before the two of them walked into the mission request center. Inside of the room was the mission assignment desk. It was a large desk with a banner with the words "Mission Assignments This Way." On it, sitting behind the large desk in the center, was the third Hokage smoking his pipe. To his right was Iruka, the Chunin instructor of the academy. To the left of the Hokage was another Chunin whose name Naruto did not know. When Naruto and Yamato entered, they got the attention of everyone in the room, especially the Hokage. "Good morning, Lord Hokage," Naruto said with a salute as he stood in front of the village's leader. "Team 11 reporting for our first mission," he added while saluting, causing the Hokage to chuckle. The exciting look that was written on Naruto's face was a look the Hokage had seen every time freshly graduated genins come to accept their first mission. "Good morning, Naruto," the Hokage said as he blew out some smoke. "Are you sure you are ready for the mission I have here for you?" the old man said, buttering the poor boy up. "You bet," Naruto said with a thumbs up. He was practically drilling now at the thought of some super cool mission. Yamato and Iruka could not help to bake their heads at the Hokage after seeing what he was doing to the poor boy. "I can handle anything you throw at him," Naruto added confidently. "So, what is the mission?" "Rescuing a princess. Bodyguards to a feudal lord. Assassinating some enemy shinobi?" Naruto asked with stars in his eyes. "Walking the Inuzuka dogs," the Hokage said as he held up a scroll with the letter D on it. Upon hearing his mission, Naruto slumped over with a gloomy black cloud hovering over his head. "But that's not cool," Naruto said while slumped over. "You are a genin, a first-rank ninja, so you do D-rank missions," the Hokage explained. "Did your grandmother not tell you this?" he asked. "She did," Naruto replied as he stood up. "She said I am going to love D-rank missions," he said with a small growl, causing everyone to chuckle. Naruto sighed and walked up to the desk and accepted the scroll from the Hokage before he stopped and think about something for a second. "How many of these can we accept?" he suddenly asked, puzzling everyone. There is no shortage of D-rank missions," the old man said with a puzzled look on his face. "Most genin teams only take 2 a day, so there are always leftover missions," he said, causing Naruto to nod. "It'll take 5 of them," he suddenly said, causing his sensei's eyes to widen. Yamato did not want to spend all day doing chores. That's a bit too much, Naruto," he said, hoping to convince his crazy genin to only take 1. Naruto, on the other hand, shook his head and held up a ram seal, causing 4 wooden clones to sprout out from his body. "Well, take 5 of them," he said, causing a slow smile to creep up onto Yamato's face. The Hokage blinked a few times before he smiled and shook his head, before signaling Iruka to hand Naruto 4 other scrolls with a letter D on them. Naruto accepted them and distributed them to his clones before turning to his sensei. "Shall we get started?" he asked. Even though he was disappointed that he will not be going on some super cool mission, he was still kind of happy about the missions he chose. It would give him the opportunity to not only see more of the village, but also interact with the villagers. "Not so fast," Yamato said as he held up a half-ram seal, causing 4 identical wooden copies of himself to emerge. "You are a genin. Your jonin sensei must be present with you on every mission, no matter how low a rank," Yamato said, causing Naruto to nod his head understanding. The 5 Narutos and the 5 Yamatos then exited the mission assignment center and made their way to their respected mission locations. For the rest of the week, the cycle continued like that. Naruto and Yamato would show up at the mission assignment center, create 5 to 10 clones, and have them do D-ran missions all around the village. Flashback end. By the end of his first week as a shinobi of the leaf, Naruto and his sensei had broken the record for the most mission completed in a single week, with them completing 51 D-rank missions. Thanks to them doing so many missions around the village, Naruto got to interact with the villagers a lot more. As a result, Naruto had become even more popular than he already was. Especially with the female population, he had lost count of the number of marriage proposals he had received in the past week. He turned all of them down, of course. After all, he was only 12 and his grandmother and big sister might skin him alive if he had decided to get married without consulting them. His training had also progressed nicely in the past week. Thanks to his sensei's help and his great-great-grandfather's notes and scrolls, his control over his wood release had only gotten better. He had learned a few more wood jutsus from his great-great-grandfather's scrolls, but he was nowhere close to mastering them. For the past week, his days were split in two. The first part of the day Yamato and him would do D-rank missions, while the second part of the day would be devoted to training with his wood release. The duo of student and sensei had only taken one day off in the past week to rest, and now they were ready to get back to work. Naruto was currently walking towards the mission assignment center to pick up another set of missions. When he got there, he saw his sensei standing by the doors leading to the assignment, all waiting for him. "Good morning, sensei," Naruto greeted as he walked up to his sensei. "Good morning, Naruto," Yamato replied with a smile. "Are you ready to get to work today?" he asked as he opened the door for his student. "You bet," Naruto replied. He honestly did not mind the D-rank missions if he was being honest, it paid good, he got to meet some rather nice people, and all he had to do was some small chores. He honestly did not get what people hated about them. "Good morning, Naruto," Yamato, the Hokage greeted with a smile. "Good morning, Lord Hokage." Both Naruto and Yamato said simultaneously with a bow. "All of your clients from last week have nothing but praise for the two of you," the Hokage said with a smile as he stared at his two shinobis. The villagers who requested missions last week had nothing but good reviews for the work the two of them did on their D-rank missions. Word of your work has spread throughout the entire village, some people are even requesting the two of you especially. The added causing a light blush to creep up on Naruto's face in embarrassment at the praise he was getting, while his sensei just stood there not reacting. "Unfortunately, Lord Hokage, those requests may have to wait," Yamato suddenly said, causing Naruto to look at him in confusion. "We have completed the necessary amount of D-rank mission. I believe Naruto is ready for a C-rank mission," he said, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in shock, while the age-old Hokage nodded his head sagely. "I see," the Hokage said while looking through the C-rank requests. "This should be simple enough for your first C-rank, Naruto," the Hokage said as he picked up a scroll of the letter C written on the outside. "A band of bandits has been reported in the area around Tenzaku quarters. They seem to have set up camp in the forest surrounding the town and are robbing those passing by, even going into the town at night and robbing the stores. Your mission is to track down this camp and eliminate the bandits," the Hokage said in a serious tone. Naruto schooled his reaction well. He could tell that the Hokage was being profoundly serious and was giving him a serious mission. Yamato and Naruto bowed to the Hokage before they spoke again. "Yes, Lord Hokage," they said before Yamato walked up to the desk and took the scroll. Both he and Naruto then exited the room, leaving the Chunins and the Hokage behind. "Was it wise to send him on a mission like this so soon, Lord Hokage?" asked Iruka, who had been sitting next to the Hokage. The old man took a long drag of his pipe and blew out the smoke before he replied to the Chunin. "It is best for him to get his first kill out of the way sooner rather than later," the Hokage said, causing the young Chunin to nod his head. But Yamato and Naruto. The duo was currently standing just outside of the assignment hall talking to each other. "Go home and pack the essentials needed for this mission," Yamato said while looking at his student. "It should take us 2 days to get there and an additional day to carry out the mission, so, pack your essentials to last a week," Yamato said, causing Naruto to nod his head before he spoke. "Yes, sensei," Naruto said with a strong nod. "Good, let's meet at the main gate in 1 hour," the Jonin suggested, to which Naruto nodded his head, held up a half-ram seal, before H disappeared in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves, leaving his sensei, who disappeared 2 seconds later in a puff of smoke. Naruto appeared in a swirl of cherry blossom leaves in front of the Senju clan compound. He unsealed the gate and entered the compound and immediately began packing the necessary things into storage seals. He had a change of clothes to last him a bit over a week, quite a few energy bars, a well-stocked first aid kit, custom-made explosive tags, a few yards of ninja wire, and some extra kunai and shurikens. Naruto sealed everything into carefully labeled storage scrolls before he stored those scrolls inside of one scroll and sealed it into the storage seal on his wrist. After making sure he had everything, Naruto activated the security seals on the compound and made his way to the main gate to meet his teacher. Naruto arrived at the main gate in time. When he got there, he saw his teacher talking to Izumo and Katetsu, the two Chunins in charge of guarding the gate. Naruto had seen the two of them a few times around the village while he was on his D-rank missions. They were always together and were always friendly to Naruto whenever they saw him, but then again everyone was friendly to Naruto. Walking up to the guard station where his sensei was standing, Naruto spoke, getting their attention. "Hey, guys," he said, walking up to the group, getting their attention. "Hey Naruto. Heard you are going on your first C-rank mission," Izumo said with a smile. "You ready?" Katetsu asked, causing Naruto to grin. You bet. Naruto replied with a thumbs up while flashing the two Chunin a wide smile, "I'm as ready could be." He added, causing the two Chunins to chuckle. "Are you well packed?" Yamato asked, getting Naruto's attention. "Yes, sensei." Naruto replied with a salute, "Everything is stored away in storage scrolls on my wrist," he said as he held up his wrist showing his sensei the storage seal. "Very well," Yamato said with a slight nod of his head, "let us get going, Tenzaku quarters is quite some distance away," he said, causing Naruto to nod his head and wave goodbye to the two Chunin guards before him, and Yamato took off at top speed. 2 days later. Naruto and Yamato had been running for 2 days with only making periodical stops for food and sleep. The sun was currently setting and they had just arrived on the outskirts of the lively town. They were currently standing on 2 tree branches some distance away from the entrance of the town. "It's getting late, we should find a place to rest for the night," Yamato said as he turned to his student. "I can have a few of my clones go into town under the transformation jutsu and try to gather some information," Naruto suggested, causing Yamato to look at him with a slightly impressed look on his face. "That's great thinking, Naruto," he said, praising his student. "Most genins would want to rush into things and immediately want to go looking for the bandits, but Naruto was thinking about the situation logically. Yamato was honestly proud of him at the moment. "I will have my clones do the same thing while the two of us find a place to stay for the night," he said, earning a nod from Naruto. They both created 5 clones each and had them transform into random people, both males and females, before sending them off into the town to gather information. Naruto and his sensei waited in the forest about 15 minutes after the clones left before they began walking towards the town to avoid suspicion. Yamato and his student checked into an inn for the night and waited to see what information their clones had gathered. Early morning the next day, Naruto and his sensei had checked out of the inn and made their way to the spot in the forest where they created the clones the previous day. They had decided to have the clones come back to that spot and dispel themselves there rather than them doing it in the town. The risk of word getting back to the bandits that people asking around about them before suddenly disappearing in a puff of smoke was high. Bandits are known to be able to pack up their stuff and move in a hurry. Both Yamato and Naruto did not want that to happen, arriving at the location. The teacher and student duo could see 8 of the 10 clones were ready there and had apparently dropped their transformation once they got there, signaling them to dispel themselves while they wait for the other 2 to arrive. The clones nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. The memories of all the clones came rushing into the minds of Naruto and Yamato. After processing the information for a few minutes, Naruto spoke up. "The intel the clones gathered puts the bandits' camp somewhere in the northeastern section of the forest surrounding the town," he said while looking at his sensei. "Yes, apparently they recently moved their camp there," Yamato said as he went over the memory of his clone. As he was talking, the 2 remaining clones showed up, both of which were Naruto's clones. They each walked up to Naruto and handed him 2 scrolls, confusing both the blonde genin and his jonin sensei. "What is this?" he asked as he took both of the scrolls. "We spent the night gathering information in a few gambling houses," one of the clones said with a grin before dispelling himself. "We won a bit of money," the other said before dispelling. The memories of the 2 cones filled Naruto's head, causing his eyes to widen slightly before shaking his head and sealing the scrolls away in the storage seal on his wrist. "How much did they win?" Yamato asked, seeing his student's reaction. 10 million ryo each, he replied with a sigh, causing his sensei's eyes to widen in shock. "I better not let grandmother find out about this or else she will drag me to every gambling hall in the Fire Country," Naruto thought to himself before looking at his sensei. "Should we head over to the bandits' camp now?" Naruto asked, knocking his sensei out of his shock. "Yes, let's go," Yamato replied before 2 of them started tree hopping to the northeastern section of the forest. It took them 30 minutes to arrive at the location of the bandits' camp. The bandits had set up quite a large camp and had enclosed it with a tall wooden fence. Naruto and his sensei were hidden up in a tree about 25 feet away from the camp. They had used their respected wood release ability to grow a few more branches around them to help shield them from being seen. Wanting to see how well his student was at strategic mission planning, he asked him a question. "How would you proceed from here, Naruto?" Yamato asked, confusing his student for a split second before Naruto realized what his sensei was doing. "I would first scope out the layout of their camp and then plan my assault from there," he replied in a serious voice, impressing his sensei once more. "And how would you scope out the layout of the camp?" Yamato asked, causing Naruto to think for a few seconds before he provided a reply. "I would create 2 clones and have them transform into birds and fly over the camp, getting a top-down view of the camp," he said, surprising his sensei. Yamato was thinking of kidnapping one of the bandits and transforming a clone into the captured bandit before infiltrating the camp, but Naruto's way was less risky and more effective. Wonderful plan, Naruto, Yamato said with an approving nod. Go ahead and send out your clones, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head before creating two shadow clones. The two clones transformed into two hawks before flying out from behind the tree branches. The two clones under the disguise of hawks flew around the camp for about half an hour, getting a good look at the layout before they both dispelled, sending the information back to Naruto. Okay, my clones dispelled, Naruto said, getting his sensei's attention as he processed the information he received from the clones. There are 20 medium-sized tents inside of the camp and one large one in the center, likely belonging to their leader, Naruto said, informing his sensei. There are only 2 exits to the camp, he said before pulling the tree branch back slightly and pointing at the large wooden gate. That is one, and there is an identical one on the opposite side of the camp. Each of the exits has 2 bandits guarding them, armed only with a simple katana, he said, causing his sensei to nod at his. There is no sort of order or formation to the tent placement. They just seem to be scattered around the massive one, he finished, turning another approving nod from his sensei at his detailed description of the camp's layout. Nice job, Naruto, Yamato said, nodding approvingly. Now tell me, how would we proceed, giving the layout of the camp? He asked as he continued to test his student. We should split up and cover both exits, preventing any of them from escaping, Naruto replied in a confident tone. With that in mind, we could do this 2 ways, he said, causing his sensei to raise an eyebrow at him. We could do it right now and be big and bold, or we could wait until nightfall and pick them off discreetly one by one under the cover of the night, he suggested, causing his sensei to contemplate the options carefully before responding. We will wait until nightfall and attack under the cover of darkness, Yamato suggested. He was a former Anbu captain, so being discreet was his specialty. Yes, sensei, Naruto replied before making himself comfortable behind all of the branches. While they were waiting for the sun to go down, Naruto began to check his kunai and shurikens, making sure he had enough in his holsters in case he may need them. The teacher and student duo stayed up in the tree, watching bandits come and go in and out of the camp for the entire day, until the sun went down. Even though it was now dark out, Naruto and Yamato were waiting for the bandits to go to sleep, lowering the risk of them being discovered. Much to their dismay, however, the bandits seemed to choose this night to have a party. It would appear as though they are having a party of some sort, Yamato commented as he peeped out from behind the branch to see the band of bandits drinking and singing around a large bonfire in the center of the camp. We will wait 2 more hours for them to get drunk, then we attack, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head. Yamato then took out a small scroll and unsealed 2 wireless radios and handed one to Naruto. We will use this to communicate with each other, he said as he handed the radio to Naruto. Set it to channel 7, he added. Naruto nodded his head before attaching the radio to his belt, before putting the earpiece in his ear and setting it to the right channel. I will be going to cover the other exit. Will you be okay? Yamato asked, slightly worried about his student. It'll be fine, sensei, Naruto replied with a confident look on his face. Very well then, I will radio in when it is time to begin, Yamato said before he stood up in the shadows of the tree and took off for the other exit, leaving Naruto alone. Naruto unsealed his metal staff and held it tightly in his hands. If he was being honest with himself, he was a bit nervous. This was the first time he would be killing someone he knew as a shinobi he would be expected to kill. This was the life he decided to live. All of his grandmother's training along with his own mental preparation was to prepare him for moments like what was about to take place. Taking a few deep breaths, he calmed himself down and took on a cold look on his face before standing up and began making his way through the trees to a poorly lit section of the camp and waited for his sensei to give the word. He stood in the shadows of the tree for 2 hours before his sensei's voice came through the radio. Okay Naruto, they seem drunk enough, let us begin, Yamato said into Naruto's earpiece. Roger that, sensei, Naruto said into the radio before he carefully hopped up onto the wooden fence and stared into the camp. There were a few tents in front of him, but there were no lights on in them, signaling no one might be in there. Naruto then looked to his left and saw the 2 gate guards standing on either side of the open gate. Deciding to take them out first, he began on top of the fence in the direction of the guards. As he was getting closer, he began channeling wind chakra into the staff, turning its dull edges into a sharp blade. When he got to the edge of the gate, he leaped up into the air and swan dived down towards the ground. As he was approaching the ground, Naruto twisted his body to the right and swung his staff out in a circle before landing on the ground. As his feet touched the ground, the heads of the 2 gate guards fell to the ground, followed by their headless bodies. Knowing he did not have time to mull over the fact that he just killed 2 people, he leaped off in the direction of a nearby tent with the lights on. As he was heading towards the tent, one of the bandits was exiting from it. Coincidentally, as the man exited the tent, he turned and looked in the direction of the gate and saw Naruto running towards him and the 2 headless bodies of the guard in front of the gate, opening his mouth to yell out and warn the other bandits. Naruto shoved his staff into the man's mouth, piercing right through his head. Before a single word could come out, using his staff, Naruto quickly pulled the man into the tent from which he came out, only to find another bandit inside sitting on a makeshift bed. Acting quickly, he took out a kunai from his holster and added his wind chakra to it before throwing it at the man on the bed. Before the bandit could even register what was going on, a wind chakra-infused kunai buried itself into his head, causing him to fall back onto the bed dead. In less than 6 seconds, Naruto had killed 4 bandits. Naruto then turned off the lights inside of the tent and peeked outside. There was another tent directly opposite from the one Naruto was in, and he could see someone was moving around inside. Looking around, making sure no one was around, he dashed into the tent to find a man standing with his back facing him, counting money with a wide smile on his face. Sneaking up behind the man, Naruto placed his hand over his mouth and slit his throat with a kunai before turning the lights off, just as he did in the previous tent. As he was about to exit the tent, he could hear someone talking just out behind the tent. Carefully sneaking outside, he snuck around the tent to see who it was. He carefully peeked his head around the corner of the tent and saw 2 drunk bandits talking to each other. "Man, I'll tell you, that house we robbed last night was loaded," one of the bandits said. "Tell me about it, I got this gold necklace from the bastard," the other said while showing the necklace around his neck. Shaking his head, Naruto ran out from around the corner and stuck his staff coated in wind chakra right through the throats of the 2 drunk men, silencing any possible screams. Naruto then held up a half-ram seal and created 4 wood clones. He sent 2 off to the right and 2 off to the left while he stayed in the middle. The 5 of them then went tent by tent, killing every bandit who was not at the giant bonfire. When Naruto reached the edge of where the bonfire party was going on, his death toll had risen to 11, giving that most of the bandits were at the party. Hiding in the shadows, he radioed his sensei. "Yamato-sensei, come in," he said in a whisper over the radio. "Yamato here," his sensei replied in a slightly worried voice. "Are you okay, Naruto?" he asked. "I'm fine, I'm just wondering how you want to deal with the group at the bonfire," he asked as he made 2 more clones and have them help his other 2 clones surround the party. "Is everything all tied up on your side?" Yamato asked. "Yes, all are dead except for those around the fire," Naruto replied in a whisper. "Well then, in that case, I think it is time for us to be bold," Yamato said, causing Naruto to smirk slightly. "Roger that, sensei," Naruto said with a smile before he quickly created a clone and dispelled it immediately, allowing its memory of the conversation with his sensei and his plan to transfer to the other clones surrounding the fire. Naruto then walked out of the shadows and stood in the middle of the part watching the bandits partying. All of a sudden Naruto saw wooden beams and branches coming from all directions, rushing towards the group of bandits. It did not harm any of them, however, it just trapped them all around the fire. "What's going on?" the leader of the bandits asked. "The trees have come alive," a drunk bandit screamed. Naruto chuckled to himself before he flashed through a few hand signs before ending with the snake hand seal. "Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu," he yelled out, causing a giant wooden serpentine dragon to burst out from the ground in front of him and rush towards the group of bandits. "It's a dragon," a few bandits yelled while pointing at the dragon. Every single bandit was frozen in fear when they saw the terrifying dragon coming towards them. Like a snake, the wooden dragon wrapped itself around the group of 20 or so bandits, grouping them together before Naruto gave it the order to begin squeezing. The giant dragon constricted itself around the bandits tighter and tighter until all of them were dead. Naruto stared at the scene before him and blinked a few times before he ran over to the side of one of the tents and puked his guts out. Yamato walked around the dragon looking for his student, only to find him hunched over the side of one of the tents puking. "You okay there, Naruto?" Yamato asked in a concerned voice. "I'm fine, sensei," Naruto replied before throwing up some more. Yamato nodded his head before turning away from his student to look at the giant dragon. He knew this was something Naruto had to go through in order to become a better shinobi. He was familiar with the sickness Naruto was feeling at the moment. Every shinobi was, for Naruto. It affected him later than it normally would for some people, due to him being in the middle of a mission, but for most people, it affected them immediately after they first killed someone. Now he was not just dealing with the fact that he killed one person, he was dealing with killing multiple people. Yamato was a bit worried about his student, but knew he was going to be okay. Focusing on the giant dragon in front of him, Yamato cannot help but be amazed by it. He had tried to make one long ago, but could never actually do it. He chalked it up to not being naturally born with the wood release like Naruto. "So," Naruto said, getting Yamato's attention, "what now?" he asked as he wiped the side of his mouth. "Well, now we destroy the bodies before we set up camp for the night," Yamato replied as he looked around. "However, I got a feeling your dragon is going to take care of destroying everything, correct?" he asked while looking at his student, who simply nodded his head. "Yeah, we just need to put some distance bet us in the camp," Naruto said, still feeling kind of upset. Alright, let's head back to Tanzuku quarters for the night, Yamato said, earning a nod from Naruto. The two then took off in the direction of the town. When they were a safe enough distance from the camp, Naruto blew up the wood dragon, destroying the entire camp. The duo arrived at the entrance to the lively town in 30 minutes. Just as they were about to walk through the entrance, a bird's cry in the air caught their attention. Looking up, they saw what appears to be a hawk circling the air above the two of them. Is that hawk flying at night? Naruto asked in a surprised tone, as he knew hawks only hunt during the day. It is a messenger from the Leaf Village, Yamato said as he held out his arm. You can see that from here? Naruto asked in a disbelieving voice, wondering how his sensei could tell that it was a messenger hawk. The bird flew down and gently landed on Yamato's arm. It was a brown hawk that had a black bag strapped to his back. Yamato opened the bag and took out a small scroll cooling bag again and giving the hawk a little push off. The hawk flew off into the night in the direction of the village. Yamato then opened the scroll and began reading it before a serious look appeared on his face. Trouble? Naruto asked in a curious voice. It would appear as though Squad 7 set out on a C-rank mission to the Land of Waves, but apparently the client lied about the dangers of the mission, which would upgrade the mission request to a B or A rank mission if he had been truthful, Yamato explained, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. We are being ordered to head to the Land of Waves and back up Squad 7, he said, causing Naruto to nod. How long will it take to get there? Naruto asked. If we leave now, we should be there by sunrise, Yamato said as he rolled up the scroll. The Land of Waves is pretty close to here, he added, causing Naruto to nod his head before letting out a sigh. The two of them then took off for the Land of Waves at top speed. Squad 7, that's the squad with the last Uchiha on it, correct? Naruto asked while they were running. Correct, it is led by Kakashi Haddock, Yamato replied as he was slightly looking forward to seeing his former Anbu captain. Of course, it is the Uchiha who gets himself in trouble and needs rescuing, Naruto said with a chuckle as they continued on their way to the Land of Wave. Naruto and his sensei had been traveling for the majority of the night, only stopping for a small break once. The sun was just beginning to rise, and Naruto and his sensei had just arrived at the shores of the Land of Fire. They were staring out at a rather large river in front of them, trying to see the shores on the other side, but could not because of the dense fog covering the area. The Land of Waves is just on the other side of this river, Yamato said as he walked up the edge of the water. He then flashed through two hand seals before a few wooden beams came out from the water and formed a small boat. Naruto could not help but smile when he saw this. Ought to love wood release, he commented with a smile, causing his sensei to chuckle before making two oars out of wood. Naruto then held up a half-ram seal and created two shadow clones to row the boat. Wood release and shadow clones, it almost feels as though we are cheating, Yamato said as he stepped into the boat. Naruto let out a small laugh before stepping in the boat as well. He sat at the back of the boat while his sensei sat in the front with the two clones, rowing the boat in the center. Naruto leaned back in the boat and propped his legs up over the side before he took a deep breath of the morning air. What exactly was Team 7's mission? Naruto asked as he exhaled. The scroll did not go into many details about what happened, but apparently they had a mission to protect a bridge builder while he was building a bridge in the Land of Waves, Yamato explained as they sailed through the morning fog. The client request was for C-rank level protection, but apparently he lied about the danger he was in. He said, causing Naruto to contemplate on the details he just received. I'm guessing there are ninjas that are after the bridge builder? Naruto asked, earning a nod from his sensei. That is the only hypothesis that makes any sense as to why Kakashi-senpai would request backup for a C-rank mission, Yamato said. Naruto still had a puzzled look on his face, however, there was something about the whole situation that was bugging him. How did Team 7 get a C-rank mission to begin with? He asked with a puzzled look on his face. It's only been a week since they were a team, the most mission they could have completed in that time is about 14 D-rank missions, Naruto added as he folded his arms. That's well below the required 26, he said. That is true, Yamato said as he began thinking about what his students said. The only reason we got one this early is that we completed 51 D-rank missions, and that is thanks to the clones. Naruto continued trying to figure out why Team 7 was allowed to break the rules. They are well below the required amount, but still allowed to go on a C-rank mission, he said before letting out a sigh. Something does not add up, he added. Let it go, it's best not to get involved in village politics, Yamato said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at him. It was an odd statement in Naruto's opinion. How is this village politics? Naruto asked himself, his sensei clearly knew something he did not. I am the acting head of the Senju clan, Naruto said, surprising his sensei. Yamato was not aware of that fact. He had assumed Tsunade was still the head of the clan, so, getting into the politics of the village is part of the job, Naruto added, earning an understanding nod from his sensei. Well, you see, Yamato began as he let out a sigh, the only reason that I could think of as to why they were allowed to go on a C-rank mission before meeting the necessary requirements is that Sasuke Uchiha is part of the team, he said, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow in confusion. Why would he be the reason? He asked, clearly confused as to why the Uchiha is getting special treatment. Well, you are new to the village, so it is understandable that you won't know, Yamato said, remind Naruto that there was still a lot about the village that he was unfamiliar with. Ever since the Uchiha massacre, Sasuke Uchiha was treated like a king by the civilian council, they made sure he had an easy time in the academy, and they basically do anything he asks them to do. He said, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. But that still does not explain how they got a C-rank mission, Naruto stated, knowing very well the civilians do not have that kind of power, even if they spoil the idiot, they don't have any authority over mission assignments, he said. In recent years, the civilian part of the council has been in the good graces of the three elders, Yamato said, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes further. His grandmother and godfather had warned him about those three old fools that has made them believe that they can act out even against some of the shinobi of the village. It is likely that Sasuke Uchiha had complained to the council about doing D-rank missions, and the council probably ordered one of the Chunins in the assignment hall to give him a C-rank mission when Hokage was not there, Yamato speculated. Naruto was getting angrier and angrier the more his sensei went on. I am going to raise hell over this, Naruto said, plotting how he was going to tear into the council once he gets back. And why did Kakashi go along with all this? He asked the next question that came to mind. Kakashi-senpai, probably that it was a simple C-rank mission, Yamato said, coming to the defense of his former captain. You rarely experience combat on a C-rank mission. We saw combat on ours because it was a more advanced C-rank mission, whereas the mission Team 7 was assigned, the most they would have had to deal with was bandits and highwaymen, he said with a sigh. For Kakashi to request backup means that they likely encountered an enemy jonin, he added. Naruto was about to say something, but before he could, one of the clones spoke up, getting his attention. Whoa, what is that? The clone asked in a surprised voice while squinting his eyes to see through the fog. Naruto looked ahead of the boat and could see the silhouette of something large in front of them. What the hell is that? He asked in a surprised voice as the boat got closer and closer to the thing. I believe that is the bridge that is being built, Yamato said as they stared up at the extremely tall structure. I have to admit it is quite impressive, he added, earning him a nod from his student. It's the biggest bridge I've ever seen, Naruto said before turning his attention to the front of the boat. Are we supposed to go through there? He asked while pointing to what looks like a tunnel. Yeah, Yamato said as he looked where his student was pointing. On the other side of the tunnel is the land of waves, he said. When the board exited the tunnel, Naruto could not help but marvel at the splendid beauty that was the land of waves. The fog was absent beyond the tunnel, allowing them to see clearly at the beautiful landscape before them. This place looks so peaceful, Naruto said as he stared out over the sparkling water. The clones continued to row the boat until they arrived at the local dock. Disembarking from the boat, Naruto looked at his sensei and spoke. How are we supposed to find this bridge builder's house? He asked as he dispelled his clones. I guess we should ask around, Yamato suggested. The duo then began walking around the small port looking for someone to ask. There were very few people around, which surprised Yamato. He remembered the land of waves being very lively and prosperous when he last came here, but now everything looks abandoned and run down. They finally found an old man sitting by one of the docks and decided to ask him. Excuse me, Yamato said, getting the man's attention. Can you tell us how to get to the bridge builder's house? He asked, causing the old man to narrow his eyes at them. Why do you want to find Tazuna's house? The man asked as he eyed the teacher-student duo with a suspicious eye. Well, we are from the Leaf Village, Yamato explained. Some of our colleagues were hired to protect Tazuna. We are here as backup, he said, causing the man's eyes to widen slightly. Oh heavens. Thank you. The man said, puzzling Naruto and Yamato. Sorry for my mistrust. I just thought you were one of the ninjas trying to kill Tazuna, the man said with a relieved look on his face. Tazuna's house is in the village more inland, the man said before walking past Naruto and pointing to a pathway going through the small forest. That pathway will take you to the village. Tazuna's house is located at the very end of the village, on the waterfront, he said, causing Naruto and Yamato to nod at him with a grateful look on their faces. Thank you very much, Yamato said as both he and Naruto bowed slightly to the old man before they began walking towards the village. The duo walked for about 30 minutes before they arrived at the village. As they were walking through the village, both Naruto and his sensei were surprised at the state of things here in the land of the wave. It looked like the entire country was struck by poverty, but neither of them could understand why. Usually, a country is hit by poverty because of a war of some sort, but no war had taken place here. As they walked through the village, they drew fearful stares from the villagers. Something is definitely happening here that we are unaware of, Naruto noted in a whisper for his sensei to hear. I agree, Yamato said with a slight nod, hopefully Kakashi-senpai can tell us more, he added as he continued down the dirt road to Tezuna's house. They walked for about another 15 minutes before they arrived at a small two-story house on the waterfront with a small dock behind it. They walked up to the front door and knocked on it a few times. Some voices could be heard from inside the house, along with some people shuffling around. Suddenly, without any warning, the door flew open, and an Uchiha holding a kunai came charging out towards Naruto and Yamato, causing them to raise an eyebrow. The sudden attack was nowhere near fast enough to take either of them by surprise. Naruto sighed to himself before he reached out with his right hand, grabbed the Uchiha by the throat and lifted him in the air. He then took his left hand, grabbed the boy's hand that was holding the kunai, before pinning him to the side of the door frame. "Have you lost your damn mind, boy?" Naruto said as he held the Uchiha up against the door frame, causing him to drop the kunai and began gasping for air. Yamato looked on with a slightly amused look on his face before he calmly walked past his student and stepped into the house. "Why in God's name are you attacking someone so blindly?" he asked. If Naruto was being honest, he was enjoying himself at the moment. "Let Sasuke go," came a screech from inside the house, causing Naruto to flinch slightly and looked over to see who was screeching like that. When he looked over, he saw the pink-haired girl from the academy. If he remembered correctly, he believed her name was Sakura Haruno. "Let him go, Naruto," his sensei said in an amused tone from inside the house, causing Naruto to let go of his grip. Sasuke then fell to the ground, hunched over, holding his throat while gasping for air. Naruto did not even spare him a glance. He just walked into the house, passing the pink-haired girl running past him, heading to check on the Uchiha. Sasuke was on the ground clutching his throat, glaring daggers into Naruto's back. "How is he so powerful?" Sasuke screamed in his mind. "He moved so fast and had me pinned to the wall like I was some plaything," he thought as his anger continued to rise. "I am an Uchiha. An elite. How can I lose to a freaking Senju?" he thought in anger. "Sasuke, are you okay?" Sakura asked as she kneeled down beside her teammate. Seeing the look Sakura was giving him only pissed him off further. She was looking at him with pity. He sounded out before standing up, putting a tough look on his face, as though he was fine before heading into the house. "Sasuke, so cool." Sakura squealed in her head before following him inside the house. With Naruto. As Naruto entered the house, he saw Team 7's Jonin Sensei sitting behind a table with an old man to his right and a pale-faced boy who Naruto recalled was named Sai, sitting to his left. Next to the old man was a young woman who looked to be in her late 20s to early 30s, and next to her was a little boy who had a sour look on his face. The group looks like they were getting ready to have breakfast, judging from all the food that laid out on the table. "You look like you have seen better days, Kakashi-senpai," Yamato said with a smile as he walked up to the table. "I'm just suffering from a bit of chakra exhaustion, nothing major," the silver-haired Jonin said with a wave as Sakura and Sasuke came and sat down beside Sai. "But when I requested the village to send reinforcements, I didn't expect them to send the Leaf Village's Star Genin team," he said in a mildly surprising, teasing tone. His team, on the other hand, was beyond confused at what he meant. "What do you mean, sensei?" Sakura asked with a confused look on her face. Naruto and Yamato sat down at the table, resting their legs for a bit. "Don't you know?" Sai asked as looked over at his two teammates with a smile that Naruto can immediately tell is fake. "Team 11 is all the talk around the village by both shinobi and civilians," he said with a fake smile, surprising his two teammates. "But how are they so famous?" Sakura asked. "They broke the record for completing the most mission in a single week," Kakashi said in an impressed tone as he looked at Yamato and Naruto. 51D rank mission in a single week, that's beyond impressive, he added, causing his two clueless students' eyes to widen in shock. "But how is that possible?" Sakura asked while Sasuke simply glared at Naruto. "Hard work and determination," Naruto said, causing the two Jonin to chuckle. "So Kakashi," Yamato said in a serious tone, "are you going to brief us on what's going on?" he asked as he looked at his old friend. "We had just completed a C-rank mission when we received word to back you up, and the scroll we received didn't go into much detail," he said, earning a nod from his fellow Jonin. Kakashi then began explaining to the two of them about the details of their mission, along with their encounters on the way to the Land of Waves. Naruto had to admit he was surprised by the amount of trouble they went through just to get the bridge builder to him, first encountering the demon brothers from the Hidden Mist, and then encountering the demon himself, Zabuza Mamachi. But the thing that surprised Naruto and Yamato the most was the fact that these men were all hired by Geto, one of the wealthiest men in the world. "I guess that explains why the village looks the way it does," Naruto noted, causing Tazuna and his daughter to nod their heads. "Yes, ever since Geto showed up here all of the sufferings began," Tazuna said with an angry look on his face. Naruto and Yamato nodded their heads with a sympathetic look on their faces. The table then fell silent for a few minutes before Sakura broke the silence. "You said you guys were on a C-rank mission?" she asked, earning a nod from Naruto and Yamato. "What was your mission?" she asked, causing everyone to look at Naruto and Yamato. Nothing too major, we just had to eliminate some bandits near Tenzaku quarters, Naruto replied, causing the girl to tilt her head to the side in confusion. If you guys had to rush here after your mission, what did you do with the bandits you captured? She asked, causing Naruto, Yamato, and Kakashi to look at her strangely. I didn't say our mission was to capture bandits, Ms. Haruno, Naruto said in a calm tone as he stared at the pink-haired girl. Sakura was confused even more by Naruto's statement. I said our mission was to eliminate them, he said, putting emphasis on the word eliminate. Sakura thought about it for a few seconds before her eyes widened in shock. You mean you, she said before trailing off, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her. Sasuke was absolutely jealous when he heard what Naruto's mission was. That is a mission that should have been given to an elite like me, not a loser like him. He thought to him as a look of jealousy was written all over his face. Naruto caught a glimpse of it and could not help but smirk. So, what is the plan going forward? Naruto asked in a serious tone. Well, I began training my genin in the tree walking exercise, you can join in if you want, he said, causing Naruto and Yamato to look at him with a deadpan look on their faces. I'm sure it will take a loser like you a few weeks to understand something like that, Sasuke blurted out with an arrogant look on his face, causing Naruto to sweat drop. I knew how to do the tree walking exercise since I was 5, Naruto said, surprising everyone at the table excluding his sensei, and it only took my 4 days, he added, causing the arrogant smirk that was on the Uchiha's face to disappear and replaced with a surprised jealous look. He had been going at it for 3 days now and was nowhere close to climbing the tree, but somehow the Senju had known this technique since he was 5, that fact just pissed Sasuke off. You brought your students on a C-rank mission without teaching them chakra control, Kakashi-senpai. Yamato asked with a disappointed look on his face. Well, we've been focusing on teamwork mostly, Kakashi said with a nervous chuckle, causing both Naruto and his sensei to shake their head disapprovingly. Well then, Yamato said before turning to Tazuna, while Kakashi-senpai recovers and his genin train, you will be guarded by either myself or Naruto here, he said, while pointing to Naruto, who waved and smiled at him. Is that brat really going to be able to protect me? Tazuna asked in a straightforward manner, causing Yamato to chuckle. He is only a genin in rank, Yamato said, surprising everyone. His skills are well beyond that of an average jonin, he added, surprising Kakashi and his students. He has even defeated me a few times, he said, causing everyone's eyes to widen in shock. You will be safe in my care, I promise, Naruto said with a warm smile. Sasuke was staring at Naruto with a disbelieving look on his face, while Tazuna's grandson was glaring at him. How can a loser like him be as powerful as a jonin? Sasuke asked himself as he stared at Naruto with a jealous look on his face. That kind of power should be mine. I needed to kill my brother and avenge my clan. He thought angrily. Lord Danzo must be made aware of this, Sai noted in his mind while staring at Naruto. Naruto, I will take the first shift, Yamato said as he turned to his student. You go get some rest, he said, causing Naruto to nod his head and stood up before he began heading outside. Naruto, Tazuna's daughter called out, getting his attention. There is a room upstairs where you can rest, she said, causing Naruto to smile at her before speaking. Thank you, but it is already pretty crowded in here, I'll set up a house outside, he said nonchalantly before walking outside. Everyone except his sensei stared at him in confusion. What does he mean, set up a house? Sakura asked the question on everyone's mind. Yamato just smiled before he spoke. You should go take a look outside, you'll see something special, he said with a smirk, wanting to see what the jonin was talking about. The 3 genin, 2 jonin, and 3 civilians headed outside to see what the blonde was going to do. When they got outside, they saw Naruto standing in the open space near Tazuna's house, flashing through hand seals before ending with the snake seal. Wood style. 4-pillar house jutsu. Naruto called out before slamming both of his palms on the ground, sending chakra into the ground. Naruto caused wooden pillars to burst up from the ground and began shaping themselves into a house. It took 3 seconds before a large 2-story house constructed itself in the once empty space. Above the doors to the house was the Senju clan symbol engraved in the wood. Naruto then stood up straight and dusted off his hand before turning to his spectators, only to see all of them, except his sensei, gaping like a fish. He always got a kick out of seeing people's reaction to his bloodline. See you? He said before walking into the house to get some rest while at the same time leaving a group of stunned shinobi behind. Yamato, that was, Kakashi began. Yes, Yamato replied with a smirk. That was the first Hokage's bloodline, Sakura whispered out. How can he have the first Hokage's bloodline, she asked, forgetting the fact that Naruto was a Senju. Well, that's because the first Hokage is his great-great-grandfather, Yamato replied. So that is the bloodline that is said to rival the Sharingan, Sasuke noted. Lord Danzo must be made aware of this. Sai thought to himself. Originally, he was placed on his team to keep an eye on Sasuke Uchiha, but this changes things. "A brat like that might put me out of business," Tazuna said, causing Yamato to chuckle. "I better get to the bridge," he added before looking at Yamato, who nodded. After heading back inside to grab his things, Tazuna and Yamato set out for the bridge. "You three head to the forest and continue your training," Kakashi said while looking at his students. Sasuke took one final look at the house and growled before walking off to the forest with Sakura and Sai following closely behind. "So friends, I stop here, thanks."